Greetings, beautiful creatures. Today we are going to do the best thing that you can do from one philosopher to another. Take time out of your life and your day, seriously analyzing their ideas, critiquing them, giving them feedback. That's what we're going to be doing today. Let's get into it. He has a plan, she has a plan, and you get to pay for it regardless.
The best way to get someone motivated is to stand for something strongly, deeply, passionately.
Subscribe to Disenthrall.
Do as you're told.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's not just going to be me today, and this is not going to be a normal stream. I've never done anything like this, so I brought some people in to help me out. Welcome to the show, Jim. He's the only guy. What are you wearing?
I'm LARPing as Bucky Beaver. What does it look like I'm doing?
Oh, you look like a Boosie, though. I don't know. What is this?
Busey. Bless your heart.
Oh man. Okay, so Jim does streams like this where he will go for, he does bus rides where he'll go for 12 hours. What is it? How long are these things?
Oh, so they usually go for about 8 hours, at a couple minutes for bathroom breaks here and there. But there was one where we did 2 trips, which Desert Bus is a bus or game where you drive a bus in a barren desert for 8 hours one way, from Tucson to Las Vegas. And there's a governor on board, not a governor, but a governor on board that prevents you from going any more than 45 miles an hour. And the whole trip takes about 8 hours. We decided to do a 2 trip, so there and back. And that took 16 hours. And I think when it was all said and done with a lunch break included, we got done in about 19 and a half hours. So it's pretty good.
So you're my expert on long streams and keeping it rolling. You've also done a lot of sort of rebuttal content on your channel where you talk through other people's philosophies. So I wanted to bring you here also because you disagree with me on some fundamental philosophical ideas. Namely, I think you're a consequentialist. I am not by any stretch. And so I wanted to have multiple ideas part of this talk as we go through it so we can come at it from different angles. Go ahead.
But even though I am a consequentialist, I kind of fall more into like the egoist camp. So, yeah.
Yeah. And you're like, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it seems like you're mostly deontological except in the extremes. And then it's sort of like back to
it's maybe like rule consequentialism is probably more where I lean on that kind of spectrum.
What did you call it?
So rule consequentialism, where there's rules that I adhere by, but there's going to be times where I'm going to deviate from that when I think the consequences are great. Like I'm perfectly fine with stealing a paperclip to save the world from a nuclear bomb. I'm perfectly fine with that. Whereas a deontological person would be like, okay, I'm going to break my rule, but it is a rule that I should obey all the time. But I think at the end of the day, a lot of deontologists at the end of the day are rule consequentialists when the rubber hits the road.
Well, Passio would probably call you a subjectivist, relativist retard. So,
he also has agrees against Satanism too. So that's a whole other can of worms. Yeah.
All right, and introducing Christian. Welcome to the show, Christian. He's the only millennial I know who doesn't want to take a selfie. How's it going, man?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me. It's I just had a big old giant plate of eggs with a bunch of bacon and sausage and sriracha, so I am ready to do some philosophy with a full belly.
All right, so here's what we're doing. Actually, like I have a little intro thing that I want to go through, and then we'll get started. And you guys are welcome to say your piece too. So I want to believe as many true things as I possibly can, and I want to believe as few false things as I can possibly learn that or I'm wrong on. Today is going to be a show like none other that I've done, both in length and in content. Today I want to become a student. I want to take a seminar in real time for you and with you to see if we can learn something new and find out if we're wrong. I want to be the best kind of student, though. I want to be the kind that pays attention, thinks critically, and questions everything. and I want to see if we can get to the bottom of this conception of rights and morality espoused by Passio. I hate talking head videos where like you take the person that you disagree with content and you chop it up into little pieces and you do like a takedown video where you're kind of snarky and asshole. Well, I guess like everything Jim does. Like, I don't like doing that kind of content. Like, you don't, without the other person there defending their ideas, you can never really be sure if you're straw manning them. And so anytime I disagree, the first thing I do is learn as much as I can. The second thing I do is invite them on my show to talk through it in real time with me. Like I did with Jim here, actually. That's a great example. He did a video on the non-aggression principle, not being everything that libertarians want or think it to be. And rather than doing a takedown video on it, I invited him on the show and he showed up for his ideas and we had a great conversation and it was an awesome live stream. So good on Jim for doing that. Unfortunately, Mark isn't Jim today. Mark is not here with me. He's declined both an invitation to talk through it here on this show with me, as well as an invitation to have a more formal moderated debate at the upcoming Anarchapulco event. His refusal to show up for his ideas puts me in a weird space. I don't like it. Those of you that know what I like to do, you know. Anyway, I'm not going to harp on that any longer. The people that know me and my story know that my introduction to philosophy and then later anarcho-capitalism came from sort of a long quest, starting with examining the founding fathers and their conception of natural rights. So I began as a natural rights, natural law, sort of following, believing Republican. And I was very interested in those ideas, and that's where my heart was for most of my life. And it was critically thinking about those ideas that started me on the entire path to where I am today. And when I heard that Passio had a conception of natural rights that might end up being valid, unlike the ones that I had previously come to the conclusion were not, I was excited. And I was looking to be like taught something new and to find out I was wrong. Unfortunately, that didn't end up being the case. Anyway, so the wisest people that I know actively seek out people that can prove them wrong. And they hold a commitment to reason and evidence above all else. And they cherish the hell out of being wrong when they find out that it actually is the case. So that's who I want to be today. When I heard about Passio's work, I was excited. Like I said, unfortunately, after spending, I don't know, the past 3.5 years looking into his work, I didn't find it to be convincing. Okay, so goal for the show. This show is for people that are familiar with Passio's work. This is not for the general public. This show is for philosophy nerds that are interested in actually understanding the fundamentals and the foundations behind the things that they believe and why they believe them, and libertarian philosophy and libertarian principle. It's not for the general public. This show is going to probably be 12 hours long because we're going to be watching an 8-hour seminar and stopping to comment along the way. So if that's not your thing, that's fine. This might not be for you. So, number one, my goal is to do for Passio exactly what I want people to do for me. When I'm wrong, I want people to tell me. I want them to tell me openly, clearly, honestly, in no uncertain terms. I want them to come at me hard. Not like assholes with a bunch of like pointless insults and ego nonsense. That's not what I mean. I want people's strongest critiques, their strongest arguments. I want my ideas attacked to my face with respect. Someone with strong arguments doesn't need insults or anger. If I find someone spending their time challenging what I believe to be true and potentially helping me learn that something I believed is false, I find that to be one of the greatest shows of respect anyone can offer me. So I want to attack Passio's bad ideas and not the man, and not the man's good ideas, of which he has many. And I want to do that in a way that I would want it done for me. And I hope that he takes it as a show of respect, as I would. Number 2 goal is to show people what a rational analysis of a philosophical work should look like. It involves people in beaver costumes. No, I'm just kidding. It's not easy. It can get very detailed, very deep and nerdy, and it requires a fair amount of knowledge of philosophy in general, the rules of reason, and sometimes a broad understanding of many topics. And number 3, I want to show the foundational flaws in Passio's conception of natural law in a way that will be convincing to those that are currently persuaded by him. That is the end of my intro. Do you guys have anything you want to say before we get started? Jim?
It's about right. Nail, head, hammer.
All right. Christian?
Yeah, if Passio could prove to me that natural law is real, I would have to stop joking about people trying to solve philosophy, and we would have the tools available to actually solve philosophy. So that would be extremely exciting. So as much as it may feel like this is coming at it from a very aggressive standpoint, just like us sitting in front of it and like talking about the video and analyzing it and kind of going through it, all the arguments and everything, there is hey, there's a non-zero chance that Passio could have the argument that solves everything and natural law is real, and then that completely changes everything for me. I leave this stream a completely different person. So that's, something to keep in mind.
Absolutely.
I do want to add one thing, and that is that it's kind of important to point out that Mark Passio's version of natural rights is a lot different than what a lot of people. I'm seeing a lot of chat in the chat where they're like saying like, "Oh, I don't know about natural law." There's a good critique of natural law by L.A. Rollins. I highly recommend this book. Underworld Amusement sells a copy of it for about $15. It also has a bunch of rebuttals. Yeah, wrong one. Has a bunch of rebuttals from Rothbard and Konkin and some of the other people that he critiqued in this as well. Highly recommend it. $15. I'm not going to link it. You can find it. You're a big boy. But yeah, this is a very different version than what you would get from people like Konkin or from Rothbard or Rand. So it's very, very important to point that out.
Thank you. And the last thing I'll say, I guess, that I should point out is there's a link in the description of this video almost everywhere we're streaming it, definitely YouTube and Odyssey, to a Google Doc. And I'm going to show it here on screen briefly. But this is a live doc that we're all going to be live editing with our notes as we go through this seminar. We're going to be taking notes. We're going to be, yeah, that's part one. That's the first note, obviously. And we're gonna be laying it all out here and trying to stay organized and actually take these ideas seriously. So there's a link in the description. You guys are all welcome to hop onto this Google Doc and watch or read along as we go. I'm not going to leave this on the screen much, but I just want people to know that it's there because we're going to be holding him to his own definitions in this process. And then the last thing I wanted to say is that in lieu of not being able to get Passio on the show, there was another person that seemed well read in the philosophy that I had invited on the show, and he was unable to make it at the last minute. So I really did try and get all sides from a philosophical perspective on the show, but that's not going to happen today. So, all right, that's all I have to say. Let's get started here. I have a button for this. There it is. All right. Maybe.
Firing up the engines.
Oh! Sorry, that was loud.
And we're off to Vegas. Highly overrated movie.
If you had to tell me, and people ask me a lot,
okay, here we go.
Great day. I'm going to go through what I consider to be the very heart of my material. And people ask me a lot. They say, you put out a lot of material on your website. What is the main thing? If you had to tell me the main thing that I should check out if I check
Frederick,
out
thanks for the $5 super chat. Appreciate you.
And I always tell them the same thing. It's the material on natural law. If nothing else, that's the material that you need to understand deeply. So that's what we're going to be covering here today in an extended presentation format.
Fabia, thanks for the tip over on Odyssey.
Before we actually get started. So I call this section Before We Begin. And the word begin is actually important here because that's really what this presentation is actually about. It's initiation. This is an initiation into really, really deep esoteric material that has been hidden from humanity for millennia. So I just want to ask people before we get started, how many of you are new or relatively new to my work? By a show of hands, please. That's excellent. This is great. That is great news. I am so glad to hear that. Okay.
How new are you guys to his work?
Didn't want is
Christian?
to come here and talk to a bunch of people who are already totally familiar with my work and have already heard it.
I've seen the documentary, like the hour-long one that he produced, but that's it. Other than that, I'm totally fresh to his content.
And life on Earth for humanity right now is
Jim?
tolerable just the way
Just the stuff that you showed me, and then I started listening to this, and then I watched the movie today.
If that
So
was the case, I was going to say, there's nothing for you here today. There's the door. Okay? So that's good, that we're all hungry for change. One of the big complaints I hear about my work, when I check in on forums or something, or read some YouTube comments, many people will say, there's nothing new here. I've heard this before somewhere else. This person covers this. I've read this in this book. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I have news for you. There is nothing new here. I am not going to present anything new. I am not going to present anything that has not actually been in existence and will continue to be in existence. I'm not making up new material. I call myself, I would refer to myself, Art said it the other day, actually yesterday when we were having dinner. He said, I consider you an aggregator of material. And I love that term. I love that description of what I do. I am an aggregator. I bring things
I have
together.
been through a large portion of his content. I've already watched most of seven hours of this seminar, as well as a lot of his other content previously. So that's my experience here.
So you will not be seeing or hearing anything new here today. Okay?
Rising
The
Sun.
old saying goes in all of the.
Let's see. Oh, sorry. Dave over on Odyssey asks, "What's the objective of this?" We are going to
people don't know what that phrase means. It means that the
do a philosophical critique
truth.
of Mark Passio's conception of natural law.
truth has
That's the goal here
always
today.
been here.
And rather than doing it in short soundbite video clip format, we're going to sort of take his longest course seriously and go all the way through it.
Among us, and it will always be here. It is our perception that must be aligned with it. So there's nothing new you're going to hear today, okay? These are eternal truths that have always been here among us. Another aspect I want to cover before we get started is about my presentation style. This is another thing that I get a lot of complaints about, and it's something that I have no intention of changing, okay? My presentation style has been described by some as extremely intense and at times even combative. This is a word many people will use to describe my presentation style. Some of you here today are very likely to be angered by some of the things you may hear me say during the duration of this seminar. And I say, so be it. That's okay. If you get angry, that's okay. The fact of the matter is that truth itself, by its very nature, is belligerent. And I'll actually be putting up a quote to that nature later on in the presentation. The reason truth is belligerent is because it actually is at war. It's at war with the lie. It's at war with deception. It's at war with mind control. So truth can be belligerent. Many people don't want to hear it when they first encounter it. So I tell people all the time, I don't do this. I don't present this information, okay, to be liked. I don't do this to make friends. Okay, I'm not interested in making a whole bunch of new friends. If it happens, that's great, okay? But that's not the reason I do what I do. I don't do this to be popular. I don't do this to make money. It's not a popularity contest. Telling people many things that they don't want to hear is not going to make you popular, or it's not going to make you a whole lot of new friends, okay? So those aren't the reasons I do what I do. To be honest, and I tell people this, and sometimes they get upset by just hearing this, I don't even really want to do this, okay? I don't want to do this with my life. I don't want to do this with my time, okay? As I already know, understand, and live the information I'm going to present. So I get this. I know this, okay? I don't need to keep going over this over and over and over again for my own entertainment, okay? The reason that I actually do this is because I recognize that in a time of such overwhelming ignorance of this critical information, this information which is capable of saving humanity from its current condition, all right? The fact that I do already understand this information places me in a position of moral obligation and responsibility. That's why I do what I do. I'm in a position of moral obligation to speak this information to other people in an effort to help to get them to understand it and live it as well. And that is the reason I do this. Every person here today who wishes to take real world value, practical value from this seminar here today, I'm going to ask them to make a deliberate and conscious effort to do two things. The first is try to set aside, to the extent that you are capable of doing so, your perceptions of me as the presenter. Okay? And this includes things like how you think I look, how you think I dress, the sound of my voice, my mannerisms, etc. Try to set those things aside to the extent that you're able to do it. And I know that's difficult for some. And I say this because paying attention to such trivialities will detract your own mental focus away from the information that is being presented today. And that's the worst thing that could happen, because it's the information that is important, not me. Try to ignore me and focus on the content. All right? The second thing I ask people to try to do is to be consciously aware of any of your own impulses that you may have here today, to immediately reject the information that is being presented in this seminar based solely upon your own initial emotional reaction, your initial emotional response to this information. Okay? This is a logical fallacy. Okay? You cannot think with the emotions. So if you hear something you don't like or that angers you, that's okay. Feel the emotion. But don't just immediately say, that can't be true. And don't believe me either. It's about checking it. It's about a process of truth discovery. It's about doing your own due diligence and actually researching this material. Okay? But if you try to gauge the veracity, meaning the truthfulness of this information, solely based upon how it makes you feel when hearing it, you are committing a logical fallacy. Okay? So I ask people to try as much as possible to suspend immediate reactions of disbelief, okay, and saying, no, I don't want to accept that, no, it can't be true, based on how something may make you feel that you hear today. That's very important to keep in mind.
I like most of what I've heard so far.
This information, the entire seminar, is a tapestry. Okay, it's like pieces of a huge jigsaw puzzle. All right? It is meant to be seen and taken as a whole in its entirety. Now, I know I'm asking a lot here too, because it's going to be a long day. Okay? And my goal here, my work here, is to keep your interest and your attention and your focus throughout the entire course of this seminar. And that's a challenging thing to do. But what I'm asking people is, you have to try to see it as a whole, because if you took the time to be here and you gave a monetary donation to be here, I'm highly recommending that you stay for the whole duration of the seminar. There's a reason for that. You're only going to get the full tapestry, especially if you're new to my work, by hearing this information in its entirety. Okay? So if you don't do that, you'll probably not recognize the patterns, which is what this is all about. That's what this day is all about, pattern recognition, okay? That are inherent to this tapestry of information. And more likely than not, you'll have wasted the time that you took to be here today and wasted the money that you spent to be here today. So I don't want anybody to waste their time and their money and their attention, and I don't think you do either. So that's why I'm asking people, stay for the whole thing. You'll get the maximum value out of this seminar if you stay for its duration. So with that having been said, let's jump into the material. This presentation is called Natural Law, the Real Law of Attraction, and How to Apply It in Your Life.
I just, there's something that bothers me about people demanding of me to watch 20 hours of content before I can ask a question or to critique an idea that I hear. Like, it shouldn't take me 20 hours of consuming content to learn or understand something. Like it would be like if somebody said I was wrong and I responded by saying, well, you just don't understand. Go watch all the 550 videos on my YouTube channel and then come back and talk to me. It's like, come on.
That reminds me, so much reminds me of talking to like free zoners and Scientologists. They were like, well, how could you talk about Scientology? Have you ever taken a course? Did you watch the tomes and tomes of, or listen to the tomes and tomes of audiobooks and audio lectures? And did you read all the books? Well, obviously not. I have a life.
But if you can't summarize your philosophy into what would be like a 30 minutes? If you can't give me a 30-minute summary that makes cohesive, rational sense, I think there's a problem. Now, sure. Yeah. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, Molyneux had a book we did a whole deep dive on that audiobook, and that audiobook's what, like 4 hours long? That's fine. I'll take it. But 8 hours?
Yeah.
Is rough.
I mean, like, if you want to do like the detailed exposition for the people that are interested, yeah, go for it. But it's not really a good look when people criticize something and you respond by saying, "Oh, you're criticizing in bad faith. You don't understand." Libertarians do this too. Go read, 5,000 pages of Rothbard and then come back. It's like that's not a good.
And I emphasize that term, real law of attraction. Many people will be familiar with the New Age variants of the so-called law or laws of attraction. And this is going to differ quite widely from what people have heard in the New Age community and in the New Age movement regarding what the law or laws of attraction are. These are the real laws of attraction you're going to be hearing today and hopefully understanding today. So let's start in.
Thank God it's not the secret.
First section is about teachability, the teachability of the student, okay? How does a student place themselves in the best position to learn? An individual's teachability, or their ability to learn by way of being taught by someone else, is extremely dependent upon the open-mindedness or closed-mindedness of the individual being taught. Low teachability derives from arrogance and rigid skepticism. But it also derives, teachability also derives from naivete and gullibility.
Low teachability derives from biases, usually like emotional biases. Like if you were raised and spanked by your parents, you're going to have a bias towards spanking. And when people tell you that spanking is harmful and to stop doing it, you're going to have an emotional reaction that'll make it more difficult for you to hear their rational arguments. Skepticism is a great thing and it shouldn't result in low teachability. It should be the standards by which you measure things that you believe or not believe. Rigid skepticism is what I aspire to be. I want to be rigidly skeptic. I don't want my biases and emotion to influence what I believe. That's how you end up believing a bunch of false things. You guys have anything to say on that? Or I'll continue.
Healthy skepticism is important. I think that's different than cynicism. I think that's what he's trying to mean, is not to be cynical.
Okay.
Maybe I'm being too charitable.
High teachability, on the other hand, derives from a balance between...
Well, when I criticize the ideas, I've been met over the past 3 years with an immediate response of, you are left brain imbalanced. You're too skeptical. You're not open to the spiritual, therefore you're not getting it because your brain is unbalanced. And that's kind of what I'm responding to here. But I'm sure we'll get more into that later.
Between healthy skepticism and an open-minded willingness to learn and change. So we don't want rigidly skeptical people, okay, that don't have an open mind at all. And we don't want naive and gullible people that will accept everything they're told. We want to strike a balance between these two modes. This is called a teachability bell curve, okay? And down here is the mental state of the student, whether they are, and it goes from arrogance, cynicism, skeptical nature, a teacher, a student, and then up to being trusting, then being gullible, and then being outright naive. Okay, so that's the whole spectrum of teachability. The best position to learn is up here at the top of the bell curve. This means you will learn the most if you are here. And that means you're in the balance between teacher and student. It means that you're somewhat skeptical and you're also somewhat trusting. It means that you're able to hold a proposition in your mind without accepting it or rejecting it immediately. It means you will consider the information with an open mind, okay, somewhat trustingly, but also somewhat skeptically. All right? That's going to be the mental state we want to attempt to keep during the duration of this seminar, and therefore you will be in the best position to learn. Of course, as we already said, the poorest positions to learn, the things that, if you're in these mind states in arrogance and rigid skepticism and naivete and gullibility, you're not going to take very much away from this seminar. Okay? So we want to remain at the top of that bell curve if at all possible. Human beings should consider with great care where their information comes from, the source for the information. And this is because by refusing to present certain information and by influencing people to dismiss, to dissuade them from looking into certain information because they're telling you that it's unimportant or unnecessary to consider, many modern institutions like media, like so-called education institutions, are seeking to actually control human perceptions, or let's call it outright what it really is, to control the mind, okay? And therefore, to limit what human beings may even come to understand, and therefore by limiting what they are coming to understand, they're actually limiting what they're able to do, what they're able to change, what they're able to create in the world, okay? So you have to be skeptical of where your information comes from. And that's why I tell people at the very beginning in my lectures, do not believe me. The worst thing you could do is believe what I'm telling you. You need to look into it for yourself, and most of all, you need to do personal introspection to really feel inside of yourself whether this information resonates with truth. Everybody has that intuitive capacity.
Christian, did you just delete Jim's O from the notes document?
I'm very sorry.
I think that's a bannable offense.
Oh no! Didn't mean to.
I agree. I mean, I enjoy this part of the talk. He's speaking
also
well
has
here.
To be turned on and engaged and used. All right. If anybody is coming to this seminar from the perspective of modern, organized, institutional bodies, meaning political thought, political agendas, political organizations, religion, religious thought, religious organizations. I'm talking about organized religion here, okay? What I call scientism, not real science, but scientism, science as set up by institutional bodies to be rigidly skeptical belief systems that blot out anything that could possibly say anything to the contrary of their pre-existing beliefs. I call that scientism, okay? And of course, the New Age movement, which you could group that in with religion. It's just it's for those who don't fall into the religious mindset. This is an alternative religion proposed for them, and they call it the New Age movement. And I tell people, please don't think this is going to concur with any of these belief systems, with any of these boxes for consciousness. This presentation is going to shatter these boxes. It stands outside of all of these because these are limiters for perception and thought. They want to place everything in a box, say nothing outside of this box is fit for human consumption, so do not go there. And as a result, they act as a mind control influence. The other and biggest limiter of the human perceptions and the mind, and ultimately of our behavior, is money itself. If you want to talk about the biggest religion, if these other religions aren't big enough and powerful enough for you, there's the one that is the ultimate power in the world, the ultimate religion, the God of this world, if you will. Okay? So what I'm basically saying here is if you're already in a mindset approaching the, let's call it the discovery of reality or the exploration of reality from any of these perspectives, you will be sorely disappointed here today by what you're going to hear, because the information here falls well outside of any of these institutional limiters for consciousness, okay? The requirements for creating change and the role of knowledge. Let's talk about these concepts for a moment. Human beings everywhere say that they want certain things in their life, and they say that they want certain things to be present for all humanity, okay? We say we want certain conditions to be present for ourselves and our species as a whole. And we say we want things such as happiness, health, peace, prosperity, freedom, etc. And all these things are great things to aspire to. And we say we want them. Most people will say and tell you we want these things, all right? However, I don't really feel that they're truly being honest with themselves, okay? They'll say they want them, but then when you tell them, well, those aren't automatic conditions. They don't just magically manifest, okay? There are requirements for obtaining these conditions, okay? And people wouldn't say they want these conditions if these conditions were already omnipresent, right? They're saying that they want something because they don't have it at all, or at least in fullness, right? So when you tell them there's requirements for obtaining them, many people will say, oh, well, I may not be willing to go there. I may not want to exert that much effort. And they believe that somehow they're going to magically get these things, right? Well, this is what the real laws of attraction are about. It's explaining conditions that you want don't just automatically manifest by thinking of them or just having a feeling about them. This is a New Age deception. There are requirements for obtaining the conditions that we say we want. Requirement exists in nature. It does exist. If you want something to be different than the way that it already is, than the default conditions, then requirement exists. If you're okay with things being the way that they are now, requirement doesn't exist. There are no requirements to creating change. You just accept the default conditions the way they are now and go on with your existence and accept it's going to be this way and possibly get worse. But if you want real change to happen, requirements exist. And this is what many New Age teachers will not tell you, or they'll outright deny that requirements exist for creating real change. Specific requirements exist in order for human beings to obtain the conditions that they say they want. If the requirements for obtaining those conditions are not met, those conditions do not just magically manifest by magical means automatically. That's not how it works, folks. And that bursts a lot of people's bubble right off the bat. This is a key concept to understand. So what are these requirements? We need to know certain things. Knowledge is required. Knowledge.
So that whole last section would be summarized as Christian wrote that preferable conditions have requirements for actualization. I think that's what that meant. That's a good summary.
Knowledge that will spur us to action. That's what's required. Okay? Since human beings as a species do not already have the things that they say they want, and again, at least not in fullness. If we want to split hairs, we could say we have a modicum of what we may say that we want, but we don't have it in the fullness that we will say that we want it, especially societally, globally, okay? So since we don't already have these things, it follows logically that the knowledge of the requirements to obtaining these things, okay, either must be absent. The knowledge is not present anywhere. Or if it is present, if that knowledge for obtaining those things, the requirements for obtaining those things, if that knowledge is present, then it must be willfully being ignored. It is here, and yet people aren't paying attention to it. They aren't taking it in and accepting it and doing anything with that knowledge. So they're ignoring
jump in for a
it because
second?
it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I just want to say, like right off the bat, Passio has already introduced the fact that logical fallacies are invalid forms of rationalization. He started this off by telling us not to commit logical fallacies. So I'm going to call him out when I see a false dilemma. Saying that someone wants to be happy, and then the reason that they aren't happy is either because they are absent of the knowledge to become happy or are willfully ignorant towards becoming happy is a false dilemma, because there are certainly circumstances you could hypothetically create where someone has the total knowledge but doesn't have the means to achieve their happiness. Let's say a Ferrari would make you happy, for example. I don't know. I just wanted to get that out there. I don't believe that that's a true dichotomy. Maybe you guys disagree with that. I don't know.
Oh, certainly. Counterexamples are easy to come up with. So my daughter got cancer. That made me very unhappy. I was very clear about what would make me happy again, and it was not within my means to affect in the world, for example. Yeah.
As long as this knowledge continues to remain either unknown or ignored, the manifestation of the desired conditions that we say that we want is impossible. Cannot happen. It is an impossibility for it to magically, automatically manifest without the requirements being met. And that's what we're going to talk about here today. What are these requirements? What is this knowledge? This knowledge is occulted, meaning hidden. Okay, now, how many people here came here today thinking that they were going to hear information about the occult by a show of hands? Okay, about half the room. Good. Okay, for the rest of the people, that may come as a shock. But what you have to understand right off the bat is that the word occult, it's simply derived from Latin, the Latin adjective occultus. Occultus in Latin means hidden, hidden from sight. And it's derived from the Latin noun oculus, which means eye. Okay? The word ocular in English means related to the eye or related to sight or vision. So what the occult is something, it is a body of knowledge that has been hidden away for a specific reason. And we're going to get into what that reason is. Okay, so from the term oculus or eye in Latin comes the verb occultare. Occultare means to hide, to conceal, or to keep secret, to keep hidden from the eye so that it cannot be seen. The information regarding natural law is occulted knowledge. It is knowledge that has been hidden from humanity. Okay, it's held by the few, which is represented here at the top of this pyramid. You can look at this as a pyramid representing knowledge or ignorance. At the top of the pyramid, you have knowledge. It's the higher you go in the pyramid, the more knowledge. Okay, but the pyramid tapers because at the top, very few people understand that information. Very few people have that
and knowing
knowledge
is half the
and have
battle.
actually integrated it into themselves to the point where it becomes understanding. All right? Down here, you have no knowledge, the ignorant masses. Okay? And up here, you have the people who are in the know, right? Who have this knowledge about how natural law works and are actually using it for a certain reason. We're going to get to that next, what that is. So please, as you go through this seminar, please keep in mind, if I ever use the term occult, all I'm talking about here is hidden knowledge. That's what it means. Occulted knowledge is hidden. Now,
So why not just say hidden knowledge? Because it sounds cooler to say occulted.
anybody want to
Yeah, because
hide
it opens the door for
that
a
is
conversation about the occult. That's pretty much what it was. And it also, I think he's also kind of priming the pump, maybe not intentionally, for this kind of argument that he's going to be using later on, where he's going into like etymology about every single word that he's going to use from here on out. And he's going to use that fallaciously at points. Here is correct, but he's not making an argument. So it's not, so it's fine.
It's also like step one of the most common sales pitch to get people to follow what you're saying or to be interested in what you're saying or to buy your product. Hey, there's this one secret that you need to know to be successful in the real estate market. It's secret knowledge. Come and I'll teach you. Like it works on humans to think, ooh, I'm getting secrets. You know, ooh, some people have secret knowledge that I need to get.
Yeah.
And this guy's going to give it to me.
It's why In-N-Out's so popular, even though it's completely overrated.
the stupid secret menu that isn't really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Extremely important.
Well, the animal
There's
fries
a
are good.
very specific reason. All right. But before we even get to that, we have to talk about what is this occulted knowledge? What is the body of knowledge? What does it comprise? When I'm saying the occult, the knowledge of the occult, what do I mean by that? All right. Occult knowledge constitutes two things. There's two general bodies of occult knowledge. In the actual mystery traditions and in occult schools, they talk about these as arcana.
So the normal definition of occult is of relating to or dealing with supernatural or magical influences, agencies, or occurrences. I don't want to like constantly do this, but I'm going to call out when he uses a totally non-standard definition of a word. In our document, I'm writing down his definitions for the words because we want to, meet him legitimately on his own terms. So we're going to use his language, but I am going to call it out when definitions are changed.
Arcana, arcana. The word arcana is also Latin. It means knowledge. Okay, that's all it means. So there's two bodies of knowledge. There's one body of knowledge in the occult called lesser arcana, the lesser arcana or the minor arcana. This means the knowledge of the microcosm, the knowledge of the small things. Okay, it doesn't mean it's less important. It means it's dealing with the individual units of consciousness, the human psyche, the psyche of the individual. Okay, so the first major body of occult knowledge constitutes knowledge of human consciousness, how it works, how it operates, what our motivations are, things like that.
Occult knowledge constitutes both the knowledge of human consciousness and how it operates, and the knowledge of natural law, the unseen universal spiritual laws which govern the consequences of human behavior. That's the first time we've seen natural law defined. That seems like a shorter version of his full definition that I have in our notes document. Okay.
The second body of occult knowledge is called...
But it was different, though. Hold on. I need to write it down because I think he's going to have multiple definitions for some of these words.
Arcana or the major arcana. All right. And again, this doesn't refer to that it's more important. It refers to it is the macrocosmic understanding, the understanding of the very large laws of nature that govern the macrocosm. Okay. So universal laws are part of the greater arcana of occult knowledge. And what I call here today, under the umbrella, the term natural law, falls into that second category of greater knowledge, the greater arcana of occult knowledge. Okay? And what these natural laws are unseen and universal spiritual laws. We can talk about the word natural here too. Natural is derived from Egyptian and other Middle Eastern tradition languages. Okay? The word neter in Egyptian, which would have been spelled without vowels, if we transliterated it, it would be NTR in English. Neter means spirit in Egyptian, in ancient Egyptian. The suffix al, even in English today, but if you go back into Arabic languages and ancient Middle Eastern languages, al as a suffix actually means of or related to, or having come from, okay? So natural, if you put these root words together, neter and al, right? It means of or related to the realm of spirit, of or related to God, actually. The word neter also meant God, spirit or God.
Go ahead, Christian.
That is 100% an etymological fallacy. That is, it's for anybody who doesn't know what an etymological fallacy, it is a faulty argument that suggests the true or proper meaning of a word is tied to an older or original meaning. It's a word game, basically. It's not a true rationalization that comes to any meaning or truth, or it doesn't build onto anything. It's basically like a form of misdirection in an attempt to to try to gain leverage in a conversation by connotating things that are old with things that are more correct. So again, this isn't like damning to his whole argument, but I think it's important to note that these things are being used and being used early. So, and Jim did call correctly that this was going to be a reoccurring theme here.
Yeah, and so just to give you an idea for people who aren't familiar with this, because I see someone talking about etymology in the chat, like, oh, this is valid. So there is a word that a lot of libertarians use all the time. It's called economics. I don't know if you've heard of this one, but maybe you've heard of something about this being a libertarian. But the original word for economics, the Middle French iakomi, from the medieval Latin economia, from the Greek economia, and from the and that means household manager. So originally the word economics was talking about how you manage your household, like how you're going to cook, what kind of groceries are you going to bring home, what kind of things you need to hunt, that sort of thing, how you're going to keep your household clean. That's why we have home economics taught in class. And the reason why we use that adjective now, or the operative word home economics, right? Now that we use that to distinguish it from economics as we use it today, which is talking about trade, money, finances, that sort of the global economies, that sort of thing. There's a reason why we use that. We have to use like that operator word now, because originally that word originally, if you were to take that class before we understood all these things, it was just called economics. But we use that term now. So the meanings of words change over time, even the more popular uses of the word. And that's why it's fallacious. So I used to hear this word in particular coming from the zeitgeist movement a lot, like, oh, economics is crap. I mean, economics originally means household management, and households were originally socialist. Therefore, Austrian economics and Chicago economics are completely wrong. It's an etymological argument, and it's wrong. It's not. So anyways,
yeah. And my point was going to be kind of the same, but slightly different. It was that you can't build a proper argument on etymology. Words' meanings are subjective. They mean whatever you want them to mean in the conversation. The closer the meaning of words that you use in your head is to the person you're talking to's head, the better you're going to be able to communicate. I call language a lossy thought compression algorithm. It's like a JPEG. You're getting an impression.
Does it look like original. I know what a JPEG is?
Yeah, you're getting an impression.
Hot dog.
You're getting an impression of the original image, but it's a compressed version. You might be missing details. That's how language works, because the meanings of words are subjective. They change over time. What's important in an argument, when you're making an argument, is not what words used to mean or how language evolved over time 1,000 years ago. What's important in an argument is what the person making the argument means right now. And so as long as we keep focused on that, we'll be able to proceed, I think.
Okay, so this is the spiritual domain, the laws that actually are operating in the unseen realm. Okay, now they manifest in the physical realm. We're going to talk about that. Okay, because that's the operation that it trickles down from. It starts in the spiritual domain and then it manifests in the physical domain. All right. So
I want to give an example of what I just said, just to really drive this point home, because I think this is fundamental to a lot of the things that Passio says. And a perfect example of the subjective meaning of words in an argument is a word like free. And we all know these sayings, right? Because it's so commonly needs to be clarified. Free as in beer, or free as in speech? Free as in like freedom, or free as in like, I'm going to give it to you without asking for money in return. Like, exact same word. So what's important when somebody says, hey, this is free to you? What's important? Is it the etymological definition of the word, or is it the intent of the person saying the word free to you? Because it's the exact same word coming out of the mouth. What's important is what people intend to communicate to you.
I don't understand why you say your computer's running. It don't have legs.
It just sits there all day, but it's running fast. Let me tell you. Yeah.
Understand these two bodies of knowledge. The lesser arcana, okay, is about the monad, or the individuated unit of consciousness of the human being. And then the greater knowledge is about the laws that govern the macrocosmic universe. All right? So, what these laws do, this body of the workings.
That is a
of
good
nature
point. The
that
word
I'm
anti-vaxxer has
calling-
definitely changed meaning recently.
Very true.
Yeah.
Did somebody
Very
say
true.
that?
Yeah,
Somebody said
like,
that.
I would abhor anybody who called themselves an anti-vaxxer a couple of years ago. Now I'm just like, well, I guess I am one.
And you have, and you had it, right? Yeah. No, you didn't have the vax. You had the actual coof, right? Or did you have
the
both?
coof.
Oh, okay.
I had to get the vaccine, and it made me more sick than COVID. Do not get it.
Jesus.
I would not. If I could go back in time, I'd just get a new career.
Wow.
Since we're addressing comments real quick, I just wanted to say one more thing. We're going to keep track of what Passio is saying, and we're going to use his definitions as best as we can to continue on. But if they cause problems in the future, we're just explaining why these things might have started to cause problems. So we're keeping track of everything. We have the Google document. We're making notes already. We have multiple points. So don't worry if you're like, oh, these things are really important to understanding it. We'll keep it in mind, but we're just addressing initial concerns with these things.
And also, for those that are just joining the stream, we are taking notes in real time, and rather than keep those notes private, we have shared the Google document publicly. There's a link in the description. You guys are welcome to follow along and watch our notes as they develop. I lost the play button. There it is.
under the umbrella natural law. They're universal spiritual laws which govern the consequences of behavior. They govern the consequences of behavior. And I would add a caveat to that. They govern the consequences of behavior for intelligent species, for beings that are capable of coming to their understanding. Okay? I would delineate that from like the animal kingdom. Okay? The animal kingdom is not held to the same standard as human beings when it comes to this body of information, because I don't think you're going to sit down with your cat and explain natural law to it.
You don't know me.
You ain't know me. This is the step 2 in his argument. So universal spiritual laws, which he also calls natural law, governs the consequences of behavior. You don't know me. Oh, Jesus, you have your soundboard. It's all right. I have my soundboard too. Now.
Okay? So when people say, well, why doesn't the...
Where is it?
Hippies? We're not hippies. We're libertarians.
All right.
Based?
The animal kingdom...
Based? Hello?
Oh yeah.
held to account in the same way that human beings are. It's because, surprise, surprise, we don't share the same level of consciousness. Okay? There is differences in levels of consciousness and abilities to comprehend information and to actually know how something works. Just like you will not be explaining physics to your dog anytime soon. Okay? You're not going to explain natural law to the animal kingdom and have them grasp it because they're not at the same level of consciousness as we are. Okay? So we are held to a different account when it comes to natural law. It governs human behavior. It would be an easy way of saying it. This body of knowledge has actually been called consequentialism by past researchers and teachers. And I have no problem with that term. I've actually looked into consequentialism, and it's quite similar, okay, in its scope and what it teaches. It's been called karma, karmic law, in many Middle Eastern and Eastern traditions, okay?
Okay, Jim, go ahead.
I think my face just summarized it pretty well.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay, so yeah, consequentialism is an ethical kind of philosophy. It's almost like a dichotomy, right? So you have people who believe in rules, and you have people who believe in outcomes. And where you are on that list kind of defines like different forms of ethical thoughts, right? It doesn't say that, like if you do a good thing, good things will come of it. It's more just how you judge an action, whether or not it's ethical or not. That's pretty much what it boils down to. Do you judge it by the rules that you set out to say you should always obey these rules, or do you go and say like, oh no, we judge it based on the outcomes? So murdering is bad because someone's going to end up being killed unjustly in the end. So that's probably a bad idea.
Is this
or
the
do you
difference?
go from the rule?
Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, or do you go by the rule that says you just don't kill anybody or you don't murder anybody, period, full stop. That's pretty much the difference. It doesn't say that if you murder someone, then then bad things will happen. It's just not what it's saying. You could actually murder someone and get away with it and live your whole life. Look at, what was that lady from that Tiger show, or that Tiger documentary, who murdered her husband allegedly. What was her name? God, it's going to kill me. Anyways,
Carol Baskin.
Carol Baskins. There we go. Yeah.
and usually when people get consequentialism wrong, they're talking about utilitarianism, and that's not even what he's talking about here either. So
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know.
Problem with that term for it either. It has been called in some of the Western traditions and Christian traditions moral law.
Ask Hillary.
And I have no problem with that term either. Religionists have called it God's law, and I have no problem with that term either. I have no problem with any of these terms being applied to the umbrella of natural law, because that is essentially what it is. But we're going to get deeply into how it works and operates in our lives here today. Why is this knowledge hidden away from people? To what ends? The knowledge of the occult, the hidden knowledge about how natural law works and how consciousness works, is not commonly known.
So a small detail was just added to occult knowledge. It's not just knowledge that is undiscovered or naturally hidden. He's saying that people are purposefully hiding this knowledge. That was something that was added just now.
That's why it's not the exoteric. It's not given to the masses. It's the esoteric. It is reserved for the few.
Oh.
And there's a reason for that. It's been deliberately hidden away and kept from the general public in order to create and maintain a power differential. Because if someone else is an extreme level of knowledge, and they know how something works, like something as trivial as how human consciousness works, how human motivations work, how human perceptions work, how human beings can be manipulated. If somebody has deep knowledge of that information, and there's a whole bunch of people over here who have not one iota of how that works, what kind of a number do you think somebody can do on people like that? See, the way I ask people to look at this is real simple. Imagine a very, very, very advanced psychologist at the top of his field, wrote all the textbooks, okay? And he's got a house out in the burbs. He comes into the university. He's got tenure, okay? He's got the trophy wife, the house out in the suburbs, the 3-car garage, driving the Lexus into work at his tenured job. And he finds out that his trophy wife is having an affair because she's bored. She's not satisfied with him at home. And it's maybe the 19-year-old, captain of the local high school football team or something. He's a senior. He's a star football player, right? The jock, yeah. And she has a fling with him. Well, what if he decides, I'm going to become buddy-buddy with my boy here after finding out about his wife's affair? And this kid, this punk, who's cheating on, my wife's cheating on me with, he knows nothing. He doesn't study the mind. He doesn't know anything even about himself. He watches TV 6 hours a day, plays violent video games, is obsessed with football, What kind of a number you think that psychologist can do on that kid? Total number. That's the answer, exactly. That's right. He could do a total number on him. He can gain his confidence, he can get into his head, and I guarantee you give him a little bit of time, he could screw up his life based on what he knows and how he would be able to manipulate based on his hatred of that person. Well, guess what? That's the position humanity's in. We're that punk jock. And I'm not saying we necessarily did something to deserve it, but we're in that same position where the people with this knowledge at the highest levels, they hate us. And they're doing a total number on us because we don't have this knowledge. And until that changes, don't expect the playing field to be leveled. Expect it to get worse. Okay? The knowledge is hidden to create and maintain a power differential. between those who hold it and those who are ignorant of it. It's that simple. The knowledge of natural law and its operations constitutes what I call the most deeply occulted or hidden information that exists on this planet. You will not find any more hidden information. This is the thing that all the distractions are there for, to keep you from learning. The endless trivialities, the nonsense you hear on the news, all the video games, all of the nonsense television, the sports, it's all there to keep people from understanding this. And I can't get you to accept that or believe it, and I don't ask you to believe it. I'm telling you that's what they're trying to, from my years of being inside occult traditions that are very, very dark. I'm telling you, this is what they don't want you to know. From firsthand experience. How many people here today know that I was involved in the dark occult in my past? Good. Great. Okay. The powers that be want to seek to keep this information hidden from the people of the earth at all costs, because understanding this information about natural law will level the playing field and put an end to the currently entrenched systems of control that are operating on the earth. We should very clearly make a distinguishment between nescience and ignorance so that people fully understand the difference between these two concepts. How many people even have heard the term nescience? Very few. This is a word that has practically been sanitized from colloquial English, practically been sanitized from the English language. And there's a reason for that too. There's two contexts to not knowing something. The first context is nescience. Okay? Nescience comes from the Latin. The prefix ne in Latin means not or not present or absent. Okay? And then sciere in Latin means to know. It's where we get the word science from. Okay? So you put them together, and nescience, it actually, those two roots form another word, nesciere. Nesciere in Latin means not to know, to not understand. But there's a connotation to it. It means to not understand because the specific information that you may be having a desire to understand is completely absent. It is not present, and you cannot actually aggregate that information. You can't bring those pieces of grammar together to form the sentence. Okay?
Okay, so
it's not present.
I can't find any information about the word nescience as he's describing it. The way I'm looking it up, even the etymology of it is just to say to not know, or for ignorance is the definition. Lack of knowledge or awareness. And when I look up the etymology for it, it just means not know.
I think he's ramming together the epistemological doctrine and like philosophy that says nothing can be known, and like the typical definition of nescience, which is like very synonymous with ignorance. So it seems like it's a hybridization of those two things, because nescience in epistemology is like an actual school of thought. You would say that's like there are no knowable facts. Everything is, subjective, I suppose, would be the easiest way of putting it. There's no objective fact. So it seems like those two things are being put together almost to say like you're ignorant, but only because you could never know the truth, kind of thing. So,
and well, we'll get to it, but yeah, I agree that this is a new definition of nescience, which is worth calling out. This is also a new definition of ignorance. Ignorance is the state of not knowing something. Has nothing to do with being willfully disregarded or refused. That's an addition.
So you don't have it at all. It's unattainable. This should be clearly delineated from ignorance. Now, nescience is not someone's fault. The information just isn't there. Okay, you can't be blamed for nescience. There is no blame in nescience. The person who is nescient is not to be blamed for being nescient. The information simply wasn't present so they could take it in and then come to understand it. Ignorance carries blame. This is another thing. People want to think in the New Age movement there's no such thing as. Nobody's to blame. And that goes to that there's no cause for anything that's happening, as you'll hear a lot in the New Age circles. Okay? I very strongly put down these notions, or attempt to. Okay? There are causes and effects.
This dude Robert in the chat is just going off constantly, but he's willfully misunderstanding our arguments. We're not trying to correct his definitions. We're just pointing out that he's using non-standard ones. We're not going to say Passio is wrong because the actual definition of ignorance doesn't include willful refusal of information. That would be what Passio is probably going to do. We're just pointing out that the definition changed. We're going to use Passio's definitions because that's how you do philosophy. Just pointing that out.
There are people who are responsible for what is happening. There is blame. Blame exists. Okay? There are people who are culpable. We're going to talk about moral culpability later. So ignorance has blame attached to it and responsibility attached to it. Okay? It comes from the Latin verb ignorare in Latin. And this means not to know, just like nescience means not to know, but in a completely different connotation. The connotation of ignorance means you don't know even though necessary information is present and right there before you, because you have willfully refused or disregarded that information. Whether you've refused it because it made you feel uncomfortable, or whether you disregarded it because you felt that's not important for me to know. I don't need to know that. Or you feel you already understand something that contradicts with what's, the new thing that you're hearing or seeing. Okay? So when you willfully disregard something, okay? If I wanted to willfully disregard the gentleman sitting in the front row, he's present. I could just pretend he's not here and ignore him. That's what ignoring is. This is why I try to say to people, the impact of the word is almost lost to us, of the word ignorance, because of the way it's pronounced. I tell people, start pronouncing it ignorance. Ignorance. Then people will hear the word ignore in it, and the connotation becomes clear. It means you're ignoring it. Ignorance. Okay? That's how I like to say it now. Because the connotation is clear that way. The information is there. The truth is there, and somebody wants to ignore it completely. Now, that is inexcusable, and there is blame that is attached with that. So what I ask people all the time is, do we have a nescient society, or do we have an ignorant one? Do we have an ignorant one? Is our society ensconced in nescience, or is it ensconced in ignorance? I would argue absolutely that we are ensconced in ignorance in society, not nescience. I think we are drowning in information. I think we are drowning in the truth that is all around us, but people are ignoring it, largely. Not everyone. There's many people who are very hungry for it and taking it in as fast as they can.
I don't disagree with that.
But I think the majority of human beings are in the state of ignorance, even though the truth is present all around us. And that constitutes what Art talked about earlier, this consensus trance, which people in the so-called truth community or truth movement have likened to sleep.
Oh boy.
They say that they are asleep. I liken it to hypnosis. If you look at the origins of the word hypnosis, right? It means suppressed knowledge. It comes from Greek. Hypo means under, as in hypodermic, under the skin. And gnosis means knowledge. The suppression of knowledge. Hypo means suppression also, under and suppression. So hypnosis is the suppression of knowledge. And that's the state that these people are in. And it's done by themselves. It's not, see, we have to stop looking at this as a victim relationship. This is a willful choice. In a time of overwhelming information available at people's fingertips, the truth being ignored is not an option. It's a willful decision that people are making. And it's a decision that they should be held accountable to because of what is going on, that they are ignoring, what they are allowing to go on in their name and not saying a thing about it. content to let evil run amok. All right?
Yeah, let me take a pause from agreeing with Passio and what he's saying to
Quit
talk
shaking your
about this-
head.
To talk about this comment from Justin that says, Patrick, he likes Patrick, but I definitely don't want this to be true. So let me take a break from agreeing that what he's saying is true to address your comment of not wanting to agree that what he's saying is true. So you're right. I don't want it to be true, and I don't want it to be false. I want to know as many true things as I can and as few false things as I can. To want it to be true would mean that I'm biased, like you probably are, into thinking that it's true. I don't want or not want it to be true. I want to know if it is for my own benefit. And that's insulting, by the way, to accuse me of bias with no evidence. I'm literally sitting here for the next 12 hours of my lifespan trying to see if I'm wrong, trying to learn something new, trying to give his ideas not just a shitty YouTube chopped up asshole chance at being true with a takedown video. I'm freaking sitting here watching his entire seminar in good faith, and you're sitting there talking shit. Leave. Just leave. Your commentary is useless to me. That's annoying.
Tell me how you really feel.
Oh,
Yeah.
insulting garbage. Bathroom
Yeah, if
break.
we really didn't want to know, yeah, we wouldn't be here for 8 whole hours at least. It doesn't
minimum.
make any sense. Yeah. It would be a whole lot easier just to cut up all the things that he says that are kind of silly and be like, haha, look how dumb he is. Make a 5-minute YouTube video, put it out there, give it a thumbnail, put some googly eyes over his face and be like, haha, Mark Passio's the big dummy stoopy head. Put a couple of drops in there and be like, we're done. Debunked. But we're sitting here instead watching 8 hours of content, 8 hours plus content going through this. And we're being as charitable as we can. There was even times where I was like, I don't know. I'm going to take the charitable view and just try to maybe he's using the wrong word here. I think I did that earlier in this talk, and try to come at this as trying to understand his position so that if we think that it's right, we can be like, well, okay, I guess I'll throw away all my David D. Friedman books and move along. Or we can say like, no, here's why we disagree. Or maybe we agree. Maybe we have some agreements. We just maybe not on definitions. Or we can just be like, oh no, this whole entire thing is wrong. Hell, communism or whatever crap. Who knows? Who knows what it'll come to?
No,
I think
sorry.
it's important
You
to
don't.
note
You don't get an easy out. You don't get to say, "Oh fuck, Patrick disagrees just because he's biased, just because he doesn't want it to be true." No, sorry, you're not getting off that easy. I interrupted you, Jim. Please go ahead.
No, that was it. I already wrapped up. You interrupted Christian.
Oh, sorry, Christian. Go ahead.
Oh,
You're
it
fine.
wasn't
We sound
sorry for me.
similar.
No, I'm just kidding.
You don't have to make me big. I just wanted to say that to everybody who's like, a little weird about how we're approaching this so far. We haven't even gotten to any arguments yet at all.
Zero.
This is all
no
assertion.
arguments.
Everything that we've watched so far has been assertions, and we have to. In a couple of these, he said that like he's not going to substantiate these things. So for any of what comes to follow, we have to accept them, and we're going to. So we're going to work from exactly what he is telling us. So don't worry. I know you might think we're biased. Hell, we probably are biased in a number of different ways. You can point out each unique ways from all of us. I promise you, we are doing this with the maximum due diligence that we can. I promise. That's all, but that's all I can do. It's an assertion. I can't substantiate that.
Look. If I have a bias that is negative towards this work, it's because his followers are universally fucking assholes when you try and question or criticize his ideas. I'm look at my chat right now. Look at the people that are just talking shit. They're not making arguments in chat. They're talking shit. That makes me biased against continuing to do this. I'm fighting the bias that your followers gave me right now.
And by the way,
I'm having a great time.
Why did we name the stream the junks? Why did we name the stream the junk science of natural law? Because it gets clicks. It's funny.
Yes, that's it.
It's YouTube.
It's that simple.
It's not that deep.
And we could walk away from this. We could actually walk away from this and be like, wow. Actually, I didn't realize he was going to make that point. That's pretty salient. Maybe he's right. We haven't got there yet, but we'll see.
It's the same responses I get when I'm debating religious people about their faith in a deity. It's the same emotional responses that I get, which makes me more skeptical, not less. But let's continue.
And then people will wonder, why are we losing freedom? Why is freedom on the wane? Why is totalitarianism and tyranny rising up? Why do we see so much control and obsession with control in our society? You know, they'll see that. Many of them will see the rising police state. They'll see the injustices in our society. They'll see the restrictions on our inherent natural liberty. Okay? But here's the thing, many of them will not make the transition to grasping.
True.
You know?
And this was 8 years pre-COVID. Imagine what he's probably saying now. Well, I mean, we don't have to imagine, he's got a podcast. But yeah, he's right.
Yeah. This is what's happening to the earth. It's being turned into a huge prison everywhere. And at the most rapid pace right here in America.
Australia.
Okay?
North
and
Korea.
They'll see this lock going onto the cage, but the question that they never get to, they don't even get to the question, let alone the answer, is why? They'll talk about the symptoms. They'll describe the prison. They'll describe every corner of the cage accurately in many cases. They can tell you exactly how it's working. They can tell you all the different aspects of the control system, but they can't tell you why it's actually going into place. Why is that happening? Well, that's what this presentation answers. Why are we losing freedom? And it gets to the actual heart of that answer. So what this presentation constitutes is a master key that unlocks all the locks to all the doors on all the cages in the prison, if it is accepted. And
Overwatch channel asks, why not invite Mark Passio on so we can clarify or respond to your questions? I'm going to keep repeating this. I have invited him multiple times. I have invited him directly. I have invited him through somebody that's in chat right now that asked him directly on my behalf. I have had the production team of the event called Anarchapulco reach out to him and see if he's interested in a formal moderated debate. Denied, denied, denied. Moving on.
Once again, I don't.
This has been going on for a year and a half at least.
For that,
right?
Because truth.
All of my interactions and invitations and attempts have been in the last few months. I kept my mouth.
I was still in Vegas.
No, I kept my mouth shut and just watched more content because I wasn't sure. I don't usually make rebuttal content until I'm sure. Like, if he's right, I want to change my position and not just go around rebutting people. So
it's always present. It's always here. It's a matter of, will we perceive it as being present, acknowledge it's present by stop ignoring it, okay, and then accept it into ourselves, and then do something with it. Understanding is not the end. Taking in the knowledge and understanding it is the beginning. Action is required. See, knowledge is required, understanding is required, but then action is finally required. Above all, if change is to be created. And that's how the laws of attraction really work. So, will people as a whole, as a society, accept that master key? I can't answer that question. All I could do is try to place it into their hands. After I have taken that key and unlocked my personal prison, my personal cages, and freed my mind, all I can do is try to help people to see, here's how this key works. Here it is. Here's the information that constitutes that key. And here's how you put it to work in your life. That's all I can do. Can't make anybody take it. Let's look at what problem solving entails, because that's really critical to understand if we're going to get past this stage and where we're at in our stifled evolutionary development as a species. There's a few main steps to solving problems, any problem. Doesn't matter what the nature of the problem is. The first is you have to recognize that the problem exists. Recognize that there is a problem to begin with. And I think by asking the question, is everybody content with the way things are? And nobody raised their hand. I think that's great because it at least acknowledges to me the people here today recognize we have a problem. And that's healthy. That's good. Okay? Many people out there don't believe we have a problem. You know, they like this place. They like the world the way that it is. You know, which is unfathomable to me, because to me it's a living hell. And that's not because of how my own personal life is going. I'm very content with my own personal life. I have no self-inflicted suffering in my personal life. I don't create problems for myself. My life goes on very well according to how I live it without hurting anybody else. The problem is other people. And that's another thing the New Agers won't acknowledge, and they'll flip out if you say that there's a problem with someone else. There are problems with other people, okay? And people will say people in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. My glass house has been taken down long since, long time ago, because I went through all that personal introspective work. And I dug deep into my subconscious and faced those problems and confronted them head on and healed them and came out of the mindset that I was once in. Okay? So, you know, people will say, if there's something you don't like, you're seeing in other people, that's something in yourself that you're seeing in them. This is New Age mumbo-jumbo nonsense, okay? If you're not part of the problem, I'm not part of this problem. I can say that honestly. I'm not part of this problem. I can look at every single person, anybody who's watching this, and say, I'm not part of the problem that's happening on the earth. With all honesty and knowing that I am telling the truth with that. Okay? But see, at one point, I was part of the problem. And a big part of the problem. Okay? What I had to do at some point is stop doing this and pointing out and saying the problem lies elsewhere while I was still part of it. And then I had to do this and point squarely at myself and say, what do I need to change here, here, and finally here in the guts, in the courage? You know, people will say, yeah, change happens in the mind, it happens in the heart. But lastly, it happens in the guts. We need to generate what I call the heart, mind, guts. Okay? You got to care enough to know and then put it into action. The heart, mind, guts. Okay? That taking action is the most important step when it comes to creating change. And we're going to get to that in a moment. But the whole point here is I had to look at what I needed to change about myself in my thoughts, my emotions, and my actions, and then change those things in myself. This is what most people want to run away from. They want to say, yeah, I want those things that I say I want to magically to be present in my life, but I don't want to do those things that require self-change in how I think, in how I feel, and in how I act. I want it magically to happen without changing those things in me. So I can honestly look at the rest of the world and say, the problem does not lie within me. I am not seeing a manifestation of myself in other people. Other people have not done the same process that I have, the introspective work that I have, and gone through that painful, painstaking work that involves effort, hard effort. I'm not up here telling people, I'm offering you the tonic. You're going to take a sip and magically you will be enlightened. Okay? Knowing what's going on in the world is hard work. It involves destruction. It's a destructive process. It involves destruction of belief systems. It involves completely breaking down barriers that are in your head. Okay? Hardly anybody wants to do that work. People want to run 1,000,000 miles an hour in the opposite direction from that work. Anything but that. I'll take the grave instead of that. Okay? That's where most people's heads are at. All right? So let's get back to the steps here for problem solving. The first is you got to recognize that there's a problem. If you are in denial, good luck. Let me know how that works out for you. Because you're not solving any problem in a state of denial at all. Fear-based denial of the problem must first be dealt with and conquered and stamped out. And you have to acknowledge how bad it is. You know? People feel symptoms coming on of a disease or something and they want to ignore it because they don't want to believe I'm sick. I don't want to believe I'm sick. I don't want to believe I have a problem. Then you're waiting. You don't get it diagnosed, and then it turns into a much bigger problem, which is where we're at as a society for ignoring this information. This is what denial looks like, symbolically, okay? A person with their head in the sand like an ostrich. And please take note, ladies and gentlemen, when you're in this position, when you're in the position of denial with your head in the sand, you're on your knees with your ass in the air. Okay? I almost say it's amazingly synchronistic that the human body was designed like that. That in order to put your head in the sand, symbolically, so to speak, you have to be on your knees. Okay? And that's
don't make it sound like a fucking fat, plumpy, delicious cock.
The second step to problem solving is to recognize that the symptoms that are being displayed, the symptoms you are seeing, are merely effects of underlying causal factors. You can't treat symptoms and solve a problem. It's not possible. That's not how problem solving works. You have to get to what caused the problem. Okay? Instead of simply treating symptoms, make an accurate diagnosis of the causes of the problem. So what does the word diagnosis mean? Diagnosis comes from Greek. The preposition dia, transliterated there in the parentheses, you see it in Greek script, okay? It means through or by way of. So by a method, by a particular method, all right? And the second part of diagnosis is the Greek noun gnosis. Gnosis means knowledge in Greek. So what a diagnosis means is through knowledge or by way of knowledge. You're going to solve the problem by way of knowledge. There is knowledge that acts as the requirement to solving the problem and getting what you want. And here's another thing, and I'm going to keep going back to this. It's going to be like an undercurrent in this, because the New Age community, have been.
I think you're muted.
Yeah, that you're muted.
Shit. I was going to say, to be clear, he hasn't made an etymological fallacy yet because he hasn't used these definitions in an argument. He's just, we haven't had any arguments yet. We're just, I guess we're setting hopefully a foundation for arguments to come later.
But I'm going to become a more outspoken opponent of New Age ideologies because they are lying to people, whether it be through direct, willful deception or whether it be through useful dupes and useful idiots. They are telling people things that are completely inaccurate to how things really work. All right? Because they want to keep people suppressed and non-active. They want people in acceptance mode of everything. Accept, never rebel. Okay? Don't take action. Just observe. Just watch. You'll hear all of these things in the New Age movement. Okay? The reason I bring it up is because when you even say the word knowledge to some New Agers, they almost take offense. Because what the New Age is becoming is the new modern day variant. It's a new form of what's known as solipsism. And we're going to get to what solipsism is in a little while. Okay?
There's a lot of that.
Essentially, people don't want to hear that knowledge is what is required. Because the attainment of real knowledge, not pseudo-knowledge, real knowledge, requires work. It requires effort.
Yeah.
It requires reading. It requires listening.
I think this is a good critique of solipsism. It's intellectual laziness. It's like, I don't want to think or do the work to try and figure out and verify my sense data or claims about the world. I'm just going to say, oh, we can't know anything. We could be a brain in a vat. So check out, go home and play your Xbox.
It requires watching. And you know what most of all it requires?
Shit, I didn't mean to make a shot at Jim with the Xbox. It could have been PlayStation, okay? That wasn't personal. Sorry, Jim. Sorry.
That people don't want to give up. Who can tell me?
I'll remember that.
Oh,
Christmas is coming up.
Oh.
Thank you, sir. It requires time.
You bought one.
There's one of the currencies people don't spend, on many things that they don't feel they can get immediate gratification from. which is why immediate gratification is so stressed in our society by the control system. That's what keeps people in their ignorance. So a diagnosis means if you're going to get well, you got to have the knowledge of the underlying causal factors that led to the creation of the symptoms. You're not going to treat the symptoms and get well. You got to have the knowledge to get to the causal factors, to find out what cause put this into effect. And we're going to talk a lot about cause and effect. The third step to problem solving is, through the knowledge that you've acquired now, via making an accurate diagnosis of the problem of the causal factors, right? You're going to then put that knowledge into action. Understanding what created the problem is like step 2, right? Stop being in denial, understand what caused the problem, act on the knowledge you now have to solve the problem, to make it right. Okay? So action is required. We make the diagnosis, then we have to take the required action necessary to rectify or to set right, which is what the word rectify means, the causal factors that led to the manifestation of the problem. Let's talk a little bit about the concept of what truth is, how I refer to truth in all of my work. Because people have a real deeply mystified concept of what truth is or what it means. You know, they'll get into all these really deep abstract discussions of the mind of God and, trying to get into quantum theory and everything. This is mystification of the concept of the truth. And we have to demystify it. We have to bring it down to real, simple, easy to understand language that anybody can comprehend.
He's about to define truth. All the philosophers' ears just perked up.
That from perception of any given thing. Because the two are not the same. When people say perception is reality, nothing could be farther from reality than that statement. Perception is not reality. Okay? It is just what it says, perception. Seeing through, perceive, to see through something.
What?
Like a lens or a filter. Okay? I perceive things differently without these glasses. That's one perception. When I put them on, I perceive things quite differently and more clearly. Okay? Well, that's how human perception works, like a lens. It's a filter. Okay? But what's there is the same thing. What's there is the same thing. All that changes how I perceived it. All right? So let's look at this concept.
Truth. Define it, please.
Truth is objective. That means that it's not dependent upon the perceptions of human beings. No one wants to hear that. That is a direct assault, a direct frontal assault on the human ego. Because everybody wants to hear, my perceptions are important. And we want to also believe my perceptions are accurate. Okay? Now people will say, well, like this. What makes you say your perception of this topic is going to be accurate? That's because I went through the process
Stop disagreeing with him, please.
Over and over and over and over and over again.
So far, I'm mainly disagreeing with the commenters, not Passio.
Perceptions.
Yeah.
I went through that destructive process of breaking down my former belief systems, of breaking down my former emotional patterns, of most of all, changing my behavior. That's the thing that's the most destructive because we get attached to our behaviors and patterns. So asking people to change, I recognize it's not easy. It took me probably about 8 years of my life to do it. Most people don't want to spend a minute on creating personal change, let alone 8 years. And when I look at myself, in all honesty, again, none of this is to sound egoic or to toot my own horn, but I look at it like I was a mild case of ego entrapment, a mild case compared to where I see other people at. I feel like I was the, very brittle stone that just needed to be hit with a chisel a few times and it broke into powder. Other people are hardened granite or diamond. To break them down is going to take enormous effort and work. And most of them don't even want to do it. They're so calcified, they've been so compressed into that hardened state that they don't even want to start. So I realize telling people your perceptions are not what really matters. You know, the truth isn't based upon how you perceive things, that it's independent from your perceptions. Most people don't want to hear that.
Yeah, biggest pet peeve of mine is when people say, well, that's your truth. My truth is blah, blah, blah. I'm like, ah!
They don't want to hear that.
Listen, I'm just living my truth as a beaver, okay?
Okay. Enjoy your truth.
Keep
Human
up, honey.
beings' perceptions are capable of wavering. They can waver slightly from the truth, and they can waver wildly from the truth. All right? What truth is that which does not waver. It doesn't move. It's that which is. It doesn't matter what anybody thinks about it. It doesn't matter whether anybody believes it. It doesn't matter whether anybody knows it. It doesn't matter whether anybody sees it. It doesn't matter whether anybody wants to see it. It's there. It's always been there. It's always going to be there. Nothing anybody does can change what has happened. Can anybody change what has already occurred in what we call, in the thinking of linear time, the past? Not one person here is capable of doing that. Let me tell you.
I need to address this because it keeps coming up in the comments. The title of this stream, The Junk Science of Natural Law, was chosen specifically because it is the least offensive way to indicate disagreement with the law, aside from just saying the critique of. And it also will be search engine optimized to appear when people search for Mark Passio, The Science of Natural Law. Because if we're going to critique it and spend the time doing this, and I'm trying to provide a counter opinion to people looking for that content, then the best way to do it is to provide a clear, concise, obvious video that says, we disagree with this content, here's the title. Yes, is it biased? Yes, it technically is. Do I think we're going to back it up by the end of the stream? Absolutely. I hope that if you're interested in the truth that is objective and not based on your opinion or feels, as we're agreeing with Passio right now, that you'll stick around to find that out.
I got a question. So
Sure.
You're probably a little bit more familiar with this content. Has he rebutted other people who's been critical of him or critical of ideas that he also holds? And does he have titles on those videos that are equally as provocative?
I can't speak to the titles. I do remember some rebuttal videos. I don't think they were specifically directed, but they were definitely sort of rebuttal style. I don't remember the titles though. But I mean, look, to your point, like he has called people that hold my exact positions fucking retards. So like, if I can be thick-skinned enough to handle him calling me a retard and still be, polite and engaged genuinely with his content, then maybe you guys can overlook the play on words of junk science in relation to what he calls the science of natural law. Maybe we can both be a little thicker skinned grown-ups about this and realize that we're here in good faith trying to figure this out.
And I know he's called
charitable.
my people things like baby rapers and shit like that. By
What?
the way, hail Satan.
What?
Yeah, I know he's called my people things like baby rapers and stuff like that too. So hail Satan.
I must have missed that. Okay.
There we go.
So I've seen him do videos about Satanism, and he says some pretty wild stuff against Satanism. So,
All right. Not familiar with that one. All right. Continuing on.
Something. Not one being in the entire manifested universe is capable of doing that. Because that which has already occurred is set in the record of the universe. Nothing can change the past. Ever. Great movie on this. Watch the new movie, The Time Machine. Not the original 50s version or 60s version. The new one. I think it came out in late 90s or early 2000s. Okay? This movie got crushed in reviews. Crushed. Whenever reviewers crush a movie and give it the worst ratings, go see that film. Because I guarantee you there's very important allegorical concepts that you need to understand embedded in that film, and that's why the reviewers crush it, because they don't want you getting any ideas. This movie got crushed in the theaters, and I'm telling you, it's one of the best films to understand the concept of the absolute impossibility of changing the past. The past cannot be altered. You know what can be altered? The future. That's what that movie's about. And you know where the alteration of the future begins? In the present moment. That's exactly right. That's the only place it begins. Okay? So what truth is, the demystified concept of truth, is it's simply that which already exists. It's that which has happened in the past and is happening in the present moment. The truth does not exist in the future. When we get to those future moments and it's the present, truth will be existent then, but not until. Okay? So there is no such thing as truth in the future. Truth is that which has occurred in the past and that which is occurring in the present. It is simply that which is and that which has been. Please recognize when I use the word truth, that is all I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the mind of God. I'm not talking about the entire reason for the existence of the universe. I'm talking about the events that have taken place in the past and are taking place in the present. That's all. And guess what? That's all the truth is. It doesn't need to be any more complicated than that. Okay? You want to make it more complicated than that, call it something other than truth so as not to confuse people to what truth really is.
Hang on. Hold on. Hold on.
Okay, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have laughed that hard. It was
Who wants to go
involuntary.
first?
You fuckhead.
If you want to make it more complicated than it is, use a different word, says Passio, who's been complicating the definitions of words for the past hour and a half.
I will say,
He does it on the
I
one
like his
that I
stuff on
do have an
truth, though.
agreement with. Yeah.
Yeah.
What?
I mean, A equals A. You know, like A equals A. What's true is true. They're objective, not dependent on perceptions. That which
A
is.
is
That's
A.
what I put in the notes. Yeah, A equals A. I mean, that's.
No,
I think
A
that's
is
a
A.
really
A equals A
serviceable-
is different.
Oh, I'm sorry. A is A. Sorry. It depends on if you're talking propositional logic, but it's fine.
Read
I took
Rand.
both, so
Reread Rand.
yeah. So objective, not dependent on perceptions. That which is. I think this is a really serviceable definition of truth.
Yep.
That we can build off of, and I don't think his perception or his definition of perception is bad either. The filter by which truth data is interpreted by an individual is, I think, perfectly serviceable. So this is actually something I was really interested to hear from him, and I'm actually really happy with his definitions.
Yep. Jim, anything else?
No, that's it.
All
A
right.
is A.
Truth versus human perception. Okay? Now, I want to ask people to imagine, see these white lines? Imagine these white lines that do not waver as truth. And imagine that the perception that is set against the truth,
Phobe says Jim is a pedantic asshole.
we're going to take three different individuals.
Correct.
There we go.
This is individual A, this is individual B, this is individual C. Okay? Their ability to perceive what has occurred and what is occurring is what I would refer to as consciousness. Okay? Consciousness is a being's ability to recognize patterns and meaning with respect to those patterns. Meaning you have an accurate understanding of what's taking place within and around you, or you have an inaccurate understanding of what's taking place in and around you. If your consciousness is high, meaning it's at a high frequency, okay, that means you're going to have more of an ability to understand and recognize the patterns. If your consciousness is low, you're at a low frequency, you're going to see the pattern less. You're not.
Okay, so these are terms that we need to catch the definitions of: high frequency consciousness versus low, because this is not like the standard definition of consciousness.
What does he have against bass?
I'm not saying he's wrong because he's not making an argument yet. I'm just saying that these definitions are
Right.
different. So, and yeah, I'll withhold
going to
commentary
accurately perceive.
for now.
So I liken this to a waveform. In simple, physics, a wave, this is a simple sine wave, okay? It has its crest here and its trough here, okay? And then the pattern repeats, goes up to the crest, down to the trough, and it repeats over again. The distance between the either crests or troughs of the wave is called the wavelength, okay? The longer the wavelength, the shorter the frequency. What that means is how frequently is it going to be intercepting the line that represents truth? How frequently is it going to be aligned with this line, which we are calling truth? Okay? Now, can everybody just, with that explanation, understand this simple model and what I'm talking about here? Is that clear? Okay, because it's important. Because this is a low frequency vibration. It's a low frequency wave. A wave like this, if it was an audio wave, would produce a low frequency, would produce a low bass tone. Okay? As we go up to a higher frequency, you can see the wavelength is shorter, meaning that it intercepts the line which represents truth much more frequently. We can count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 there. Okay? So this is a higher frequency vibration. And we go up to an even higher frequency. Let's say person C has this consciousness. They have a higher frequency. Okay? And they're intercepting the line that represents truth, much more frequency. I won't count those out because there's a lot of them, okay? The higher the frequency, the more in tune with truth we are. What would happen if this frequency became infinitely high? What would it become? It would be indistinguishable from a line. And therefore, someone would be aligned to that which is. The higher the level of consciousness or frequency, which is their perception of reality being accurate, okay? Not wavering as much from the truth, because it's hitting it in more places. We would basically, this wave would turn into a line at some point. The higher the frequency.
It's almost coming off a little bit like slam poetry. That is a line. Okay, come on. Okay, sorry, I had to.
I wasn't going to pause it to say this, but now that it's paused, the high frequency consciousness stuff is like usually like hippie speak that has very little actual tangible meaning, and so I get a little bit leery when people start using language like this. Like perceptions are not waves, and we can perceive things, and our perceptions have the capacity for accuracy, but they can be flawed sometimes. I don't know. I don't really mind this model. It's just kind of weird. But it's
just that it's been going on for so long. I think
that's true.
It's pretty clear what he's saying, and he's probably going to go for another 5 minutes at least.
Hope not.
Sound, right? You hear a low bass tone, it's like, then it goes up, and it would go eventually outside the range of same concept here. The higher the frequency, the higher
he keeps talking about this. I'm going to feel like I'm like a monkey touching the monolith.
Okay? The concept to keep in mind here is perception is not reality. It's the filter we see reality through. What the human being's work is to do is to align their perception to the reality which exists, which is truth. We need to set aside what we want the truth to be.
Yes.
And look at what it is. What it is altogether different than what we want it to be.
A lot of times.
But until we recognize what it is, we're not even in a position to make an accurate diagnosis of what's going on and therefore create what we want it to be. So I'm going to give the first quote here, comes from a gentleman I personally greatly respect. How many people are familiar with Travis Walton, by a show of hands? Hardly anybody in the room. Wow, 2 people. Amazing. And I know Barb is in the back because we've met him personally. I spoke with this gentleman at a conference last year in 2012. And I just want to say, I just think he's a totally genuine individual. I don't care what anybody thinks of me saying that, okay? I believe him. Do I know factually that what he claims happened to him did? No, I do not. But I believe what he is saying for a reason. When I am around somebody, especially for any length of time, I think my intuition is good that I can get a feel for their heart, okay? And when he's telling you stuff, it's very consistent.
He introed the talk by saying we shouldn't believe things based on feelings. And now he's talking about believing this guy because he feels like he has a good heart.
Maybe he's separating like evaluations of people with like this, natural law understanding of reality. I think that might be like a charitable way to look at it. Is that
fair?
The two things are separate.
Yeah, it's also the way that we determine if our perceptions are accurate and true is by applying a non-biased, rigorous method of standards of reason and evidence. I wish he had mentioned that, because that's really the step 2 of what he's trying to say. Like, our senses, our perceptions have the capacity for accuracy, but they also can be flawed many times. So how do we meet that out? How do we cross the bridge between sense data and truth? What constitutes our standards for belief? You have to have standards, and I'm sure he'll get to it, but yeah.
And in his book, he asked people, you need to listen to my whole story, suspend your disbelief for a minute, and then do your research, and then make a judgment call. Do you want to believe me? Do you think I'm telling you the truth? Do you think I'm lying to you? And then make up your own mind, okay? And who Travis Walton is, he was claims that he was an abductee, that he was taken on board an extraterrestrial craft at a point in time. He disappeared for days. They were out looking for him, and his best friends were accused of murdering him. And he shows up 5 days later in like deplorable conditions, out on a country road someplace. But anyway, again, I spoke with him back in 2012. I just bumped into him again. We were just at a conference. I'm bringing this up for a reason. We were just at a conference in Philadelphia where he spoke. And this quote, I feel I would start, if I was going to quote somebody, I was going to make this like the first quote in the presentation today. Travis Walton says in his book, which is called Fire in the Sky, he said, I have come to realize that the biggest problem anywhere in the world, the biggest problem anywhere in the world is that people's perceptions of reality are compulsively filtered through the screening mesh of what they want and do not want to be true. Now, when I read that in his book, I got chills up and down my spine. Because I said, this meshes exactly with what I'm talking about in my section, in my presentation called Truth versus Perception. And he's encapsulating it in a sentence perfectly. All right? We want things to be true. That doesn't make it so.
Yeah, I want to underscore this and my agreement with it by quoting one of my favorite fiction authors, Terry Goodkind, rest in peace. He wrote a series of books called The Sword of Truth. Before I became a libertarian, back when I was an unthinking Republican, I read his fantasy novel series, and they have very libertarian bents in them. And he exposed me through story to a lot of libertarian principle without me even realizing it. Anyway, one of the first things that he mentions, there are wizards in the books, and the wizards have rules. They're called the wizard's rules. The wizard's first rule is people are stupid. Given proper motivation, almost anyone will believe almost anything. Because people are stupid, they will believe a lie because they want to believe it's true or because they're afraid that it might be true. People's heads are full of knowledge, facts, and beliefs, and most of it is false, yet they think it all true. People are stupid. They can only rarely tell the difference between a lie and the truth, and yet they are confident they can, and so all are the easier to fool. That's the wizard's first rule from the book series, The Sword of Truth, which I would highly recommend to everyone.
I have a perfectly good reason to.
Go ahead.
I have a perfectly good ability and reason to scoff at aliens. I lived in Nevada. Moving along.
Do not watch the TV show Sword of Truth. Do not. That is an abomination. Read the books.
The way that it is. What makes truth is the way that it is what behaviors were taken and what is the actual effect in the manifested world. That's how things are. Okay? It doesn't matter how we want them to be. They may be a completely different way right now than we want them to be. And I would say for the people in this room, they are a completely different way than we want them to be. But most people in the world think, they kind of believe that they're the arbiter of truth. And that's a bad place to be in. That's a very, very low level of consciousness. To think that if I don't believe that it's this way, it's not this way. Many people are trapped in that state of mind. Okay? Now, the reason I even bring this up and included Travis's quote here is at this conference that we were just at a couple of weeks ago. Okay? I didn't speak at it. I tabled at it. A woman came up to my table. and she picked up my New Age Bullshit DVD, which is available here today in the back. And she said, "What's this about?"
Bite your lip, Jim. Bite
With
your
a
lip.
real skeptical look. And I explained, I said, well, it's a 7-hour extended video podcast that has many, many slides, okay? I gave a shortened version of it at the Free Your Mind conference in Philadelphia. And this is the extended version that goes deeply into the deception of the New Age movement and how it is a religion that is designed to suppress the masculine side of the personality, which is the side that actually takes action and creates change, okay? And that's, of course, pushed by the sacred feminine, which is care and creativity, and compassion, right? Both need to be present. We're going to talk about that here today. But I said, this is about the suppression of that masculine energy. And that's what the New Age movement is about, the suppression of the masculine, right? So I said, what the New Age religion wants to teach people is just accept everything the way it is, no matter how unjust it is, no matter how deplorable the conditions are, no matter how much evil is taking place in our midst. Accept it. That's the New Age religion. And here's what she said. That's exactly how I am. I just accept everything. I don't make any judgments on anything that occurs, no matter what it is, no matter how it's perceived. You want to perceive it as evil? That's your judgment. I said, yes, it is my judgment. You know why? Because it's evil. It really is. There is such a thing. I said, and you're content to let evil run amok and take this whole world because you don't want to act. Because what's really there is cowardice. That's what it really is. Okay? She didn't want to hear that. She said, I prefer not to see it that way. Now, align this with the quote. I prefer not to see it that way. Okay? And I hope by some miracle she happens to see this presentation at some point. Okay? And, you know, in hindsight, I didn't say this to her on the spot, but I thought about it for a little bit the next day. And what I should have really said is, no, you prefer not to see, period. That's...
Got him! Sorry. Yes, Wizard's First Rule. It's a whole series of books. It's all really good. Don't stop reading the series until you get to the book Faith of the Fallen. That book, back when I was a Republican, like woke me up to the underlying reasons of why communism. That was like a 20-second delay, Jim. Come on now.
It took me a while to get it. I'm sorry.
Be better.
the truth.
Look, here's the thing. Listen, I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm kind of retarded. In that. I've extrapolated this out, and I won't have to for a few years since I got food and stuff. My superpower is being honest. I'll eat your ass. I will. I'm combat model, optimum self-sufficiency, probably the leader. I'll do it. I will eat your ass. And that's why I want the globalists to know. I will eat your ass first. Get ready to lose some pounds. Get ready to get shot and thrown in a ditch. Get ready to get dipped in acid baths. But first, you're going to get raped.
Okay. All right.
I prefer not to see it that way means, no, I want to ignore reality. I want to believe what I want to be true is the way that it already is. And this is what the New Age hoax is peddling to people. Okay? So, great quote that I thought accurately sums it all up. See, this woman also told me that she is a follower, quote unquote, of the New Age ideology that is referred to as the Course in Miracles. How many people have even heard of this? A lot of people, okay? You know what that is? It's called solipsism, wrapped in a nice, neat new package. Solipsism. How many people are familiar with the ideology called solipsism? Good. More than I would have thought.
Yep.
Most people have never heard of this.
Christian and I did a video where we talked about this on his channel. I should have linked your channels in the description. I'll definitely do that after the stream's over. But just for now, everybody can know that. Christian, tell people where they can find your channel and maybe the name of that video where we talked about solipsism.
Liberty After Dark. I believe that was the State of Nature episode. If I remember correctly. It was one of the 2 long live streams, the last 2 that I did before the coconut video. So they're both great, though. Watch them both.
I have vowed to not play the coconut clip anymore, so you're safe. Jim, where can people find you?
Just look for Jim Jesus, one word, camel cased, and you'll find the Jim Jesus and not the Jim Jesus. Subscribe to both because I'm still not sure which one I'm going to make my main channel, since one is demonetized and the other one is sorely limited by the fact I only have 59 subscribers on it right now. So, yeah.
Okay. Solipsism is a completely egoic and destructive ideology that has absolutely no bearing or resemblance to truth in any way. And the people who are solipsists are mentally ill. I'm not even going to provide any evidence of that. I'm telling you, you need to research this religion and sickness for yourself. It's a mental illness. A solipsist is a mentally ill person who should probably be somehow removed, segregated from society, and institutionalized until they are made well, because they are a destructive influence on society.
That would be an initiation of force, sir.
Podcast number 1 of my podcast.
Jesus.
I mean, my personal subjective assessment of solipsists is that they're mental cases. Yes, but I would not initiate force on them. I would not cage them.
Video shows. I went into the ideology of what solipsism is and how destructive it is and how it's a religion. Okay? What this is, well, first of all, let's look at the word. And you'll notice I'll be breaking down words all day long. Because if you don't understand where words came from, you don't really understand what they really were intended to mean. Regardless of whatever connotation they may have taken on in the modern world, the intended meaning of the word, the original meaning, is derived from its etymological derivation. You need to go into the ancient languages, Latin and Greek roots and other languages, Germanic, Arabic, etc., and you need to break down the words from their etymological origins. Then you will understand their real meaning. And I'm telling you do this, and the top of your head will blow off by what you will find.
Words do not have, quote, real meanings. Full stop.
Not only wrong, you're immoral.
Oh, do I have that one? Hold on.
I can give it to you if you need it.
I mean, I thought I had it, but I don't have it on my board. Oh, well. Yeah.
I will give it
by
to you.
What words we speak on a daily basis actually mean, and we have no idea what they mean. Okay? So the word solipsism comes from the Latin adjective solus, which means alone or one. And then the Latin pronoun ipse, which means self, myself, etc. Okay? The ideology of solipsism is that nothing exists outside of me. I'm the only being that exists in creation. Or essentially, it's another way of saying I'm God. Okay? That my perception is the only real perception and no one else is here. Now imagine that. Now, what I'm essentially telling the audience here today is your perceptions are not the truth. You have to work to align your perceptions with the truth. That's damaging enough to the human ego. Okay? If I just said, none of you exist, I'm only perceiving your existence, I'm the only one who exists, imagine how egoic that statement is, and actually how demoralizing it is to other people. You're even...
What are you doing? One of my chickens, everyone. My wife wanted the chicken to be on the stream. Thank you. Okay. Here you go.
Excellent!
What a cluster cluck.
Telling them, I don't even consider that you exist.
Random ass stream. Here we go.
That's what a solipsist is. the universe is a big illusion created somehow for their amusement. And that there's no objective reality that you don't exist, you don't exist, you don't exist, you don't exist. I'm the only one who exists. And that's not mental illness. We don't diagnose that as mental illness.
The executioner?
Okay? I don't care if you want to accept the notion everything is one. I personally accept that notion. I do accept that we are all one. That doesn't mean you're not existent in the physical domain right now as I'm talking to you. Of course we all exist here. We are in the physical domain. Okay? The whole point is these people want to believe the entire spiritual physical domain is such an illusion that nothing that takes place in it matters or has any significance and should just be watched and nothing should be done to change it. And let me explain what this is, folks. When I was a Satanist, okay, and I was working inside the Church of Satan and other dark occult organizations, they have a set of sins, believe it or not. They don't look at them as sins in the same way that, religionists look at sin. But they have the things that, these are behaviors and thought patterns that should not be engaged in by the dark occultist themselves, by the magician, if you will. You are not to engage in these behaviors, but we are to peddle them to other people. We are to get them to engage in these behaviors. Okay? You know what the first one is? No, it's not. That's the second or third. I think it's the third, if I'm not mistaken. I don't have the list handy. But the first one is stupidity. That's the first satanic sin. Okay? For the dark occultist. But they want other people in deep stupidity. They want other people in deep ignorance. The idea here is we will know it all. We will know the truth so that we can control others and keep them a dumbed down herd. Okay?
Doom was a great game.
There's a bunch of other ones, but I think the second or third is solipsism. Solipsism is one of the biggest sin for Satanists and dark Luciferians and dark occultists. They don't want any of their membership believing in this mental illness nonsense. Okay? But they want to propagate it and peddle it. They want to do that. And they told me personally, higher ups in this network told me personally when I was working with them, wait until you see the New Age books that our membership, will be writing, or either writing ourselves or putting into the hands of useful dupes to write and put out there. We'll be giving them the idea, they'll write it for us, put it out there as their own idea. And they said, we are going to propagate and peddle solipsism like you have never seen. And you know what? When they say something, they do it. I'm serious. They're aligned. Their act is together. They act on the same page. And for that, I have respect for them as an enemy. And I don't take anything they do lightly. I recognize they have the will. They're not like the rest of humanity. They align their thoughts, their knowledge, with their version of care. It's not like our emotionally based care, but they care about what they're doing, and then they act. And when they act in concert, and they get it done. Okay? I'm not saying, I agree with any of their agenda, because I don't, and I'm trying to stop it. But I have respect for their unity. They are unified and on the same page, and humanity is not. And that's why, in all honesty, we're having our rear ends handed to us in this spiritual battle right now, at least right now. Solipsism is the ideology that only one's mind is sure to exist. Solipsists contend that knowledge of anything that is outside of one's own mind is unsure, and hence there is no such thing as objective truth. Okay? No such thing as objective truth. And therefore, nothing about the external world and its workings can actually ever be known. Just think about that statement. It's saying no one can ever know anything. You cannot come to know anything at all. There is no such thing as knowledge. So what I would say to somebody who's following the quote-unquote Course in Miracles, or a Course in Solipsism, or a Course in acceptance of all forms of evil in this world, is you can't know anything by reading the Course in Miracles, because nothing can be known, you know? Why would a solipsist ever pick up a book? Why would a solipsist ever watch anything, any video? Why would a solipsist ever engage in a conversation with another human being? You know? Tell a solipsist you can't know that you're going to fall off that cliff, so why don't you go try to walk over and see what happens? Because you can't be sure of anything. They won't do that, though, you know? The whole point here is this is a religion. This is a New Age religion. And I'm telling you who it's peddled by. It's peddled by the occultists who have the knowledge of how natural law works and are trying to put out whatever ideologies they can, destructive ideologies they can, to get people not to understand it, or to even go so far as to believe that nothing can be understood. Why would you bother to look into natural law? Nothing can be known. It's unbelievable that anybody would be so gullible and naive to fall into this mindset. Let me just tell you what it really is. It's a person who has given up on life. They feel that it's so difficult to know.
He's hard in the paint on solipsist, isn't he?
To come to that level of knowledge that they've just said, I don't believe it can be known. That makes me feel more comfortable in my ignorance and laziness. That's the truth about what solipsism is. Okay? And that's the truth about my friend I bumped into at the MUFON conference. And I'd say that to her face. Okay? So, we have to realize we're battling this force. This religion is on the rise. Solipsism is on the rise. More people are becoming solipsists or solipsistic in their beliefs, in their thought processes. Let's look at some basic definitions. I will also contend that more people are
becoming libertarians as well. So, to be fair,
and nobody on the screen right now is a solipsist, so I don't think we're going to have a lot of objections here. I mean, I think
I'm a Satanist, and he's accusing me of spreading this crap. So, not true.
Yeah. I think his criticisms go a little too far of solipsists because, as far as I'm aware, the problem of hard solipsism hasn't been answered by anyone in a clear-cut way, but yeah, this is not a topic I really care to spend much time on. It's kind of a pointless hole of time wasting. Yeah.
Well, I suppose if you believe that there is objective truth and natural law that you can rely on, then you would be able to disprove solipsism, right? Like that's why there hasn't been a successful attempt, epistemologically speaking, to debunk solipsism, because it requires something so true that it can't be, that is the most likely and most powerful explanation for the phenomenon that happened. So there is no counterexample to.
Yeah, so I guess what you're saying is that for his natural law conception to be true, he must have an answer to hard solipsism, which I'm not aware anybody's answered yet, but maybe it's in here. Let's see.
First thing we're going to define is definition. Let's define what a definition is, okay? A definition is an exact statement, a statement of the exact meaning of a word, all right? We're looking for an exact meaning, not a connotation, not a maybe or a like or a somewhat. We're looking to narrow the focus. That's why it definites it. It makes it finite. We're taking it, not infinite, we're finiting it. We're making it finite. Okay?
Wouldn't we be
sure this isn't slam poetry?
Which is like unfiniting it? Like to definite it? Would it be like unfiniting it?
What he does is sometimes it almost sounds like slam poetry. It really does.
There's a lot of definitions in this beginning part, and I'm very surprised that we're defining definitions after we've defined a bunch of things. But hey, I mean, it's his presentation, so
limiting through words what something means, so we can be clearer about what we're saying. Okay, it's an exact statement or description of the nature, scope, or meaning of something. Another way we could look at a definition when we're talking about visual or audio definition is it's the degree of distinctness or clarity of an object, image, or sound. Okay? So why do people buy HD TV sets? They want higher definition. They want a higher clarity of the picture. Okay? If you have high definition audio, for audio files, they won't accept anything but high definition audio, because in comparison to low def audio, the clarity of the sound is very good. It's much better. Okay?
So I think he means fidelity.
That's what definition is. It is all related to clarity. When we use it in conjunction with words, it means the clarity of the meaning is amplified. Okay? And when it's with a picture, the clarity of our vision, of the ability to see what the picture is, the information in the picture is amplified. And same thing with sound. The more accurate the definitions that we have for words or concepts, the better our clarity of meaning and therefore our understanding of those concepts, words or concepts will be. So,
okay. Hard disagree with that last sentence where he says the more accurate our definitions for words or concepts are, the better our clarity of meaning and therefore our understanding of those words or concepts will be. This is an inversion. This is cart before the horse. Words are used to describe reality. You can't examine a word closer and learn anything about reality. That's backwards. Also, you're clarifying the meaning in the head of the person sending that word at you, trying to communicate to you with that word. You're not clarifying the meaning of the word itself. Like, that's not... Words don't have their own objective meaning separate from human minds. You have to clarify the meaning being sent to you. That's what's important.
definition simply means clarity of meaning when we're applying it to words and concepts. So therefore, let's define natural law. So this is what we're going to be talking about for the rest of the day. We have to define it. The simple definition of natural is inherent, having a basis in nature, reality, and truth, not made or caused by humankind. So if it's natural, it wasn't made by man. Mankind didn't make it. Okay? And again, the origin of the word, neter in Egyptian, means spirit, and all means of or related to. So of or related to spirit. It is all of nature, the spiritual domain. See, this is the other part. People believe that the spiritual domain is separate from the physical domain. This is a huge thread and a huge central focus in all of my work. If you think the spiritual domain is not where you are at now because you're in the physical domain, you're mistaken. If you think that the spiritual domain is someplace other than the physical domain, you're also mistaken. If you place emphasis on one above the other and say, well, this one takes precedence and this one's not important. Either way you do it, whether you say the spiritual is more important and the world of matter should not be given any significance, it's imbalance and it's not true. Okay? Or if you say, hey, like scientism does in many, left brain scientism, the material world is all that there is. This is just a dead mechanized.
I can't even rebut that statement because he hasn't defined spiritual domain. I don't know what that is.
Spiritual domain. Both of these worldviews, and we're going to get to a breakdown of these worldviews, they're completely inaccurate, they're not based in truth, and most of all, they're based on brain imbalance. And we're going to see how one of these worldviews or another develops when either the left brain hemisphere or the right brain hemisphere has taken precedence and dominance within the individual consciousness.
Oh boy.
Natural means spiritual. These words could be used interchangeably. So when I'm talking about natural law, I mean spiritual law, unseen spiritual laws. But overall, the dictionary definition of natural is it's inherent to nature and it's not made by man. The word law the definition is an existing condition which is both binding and immutable. So let's look at each one of these words. Existing. It means that it is present. It is present. Okay? It cannot be just ignored and expected that, well, that doesn't make it true and it's not going to have an effect. It's there. It's present. That's why it's a law that it's in operation, that is in operation. It is binding. Binding means it has an effect. It means it doesn't matter whether you believe that it has an effect. It doesn't matter whether you understand that it has an effect. It doesn't care. And this is another big hammer to the ego. The human ego wants to hear what it wants to hear. One of the things it wants to hear is the universe cares about you personally. It cares about John. It cares about Bob. It cares about Mary. It cares about Elizabeth, whatever. Okay? It cares about you individually as a being. Now, you could go so far as to say you believe that the creator of the universe cares about you. I'm not denying anybody or saying don't think that. What I'm saying is that the laws of the universe don't care about you. Laws have been created in this realm that work flawlessly, 100% of the time, flawlessly. Let me ask people to envision this scenario to try to clarify this.
That's important. I'll add that to the notes. The natural laws he's talking about. Oh, yeah. Yeah, works 100% of the time. That's going to be, he's setting up standards for his own arguments later that we're going to hold him to account for. Just pointing that out for people viewing. Like, look at our notes, link in the description. We're taking notes, we're recording what he says, not disingenuously. We're going to hold him to his own standards. Also, there was some interesting unclarity, and I don't know, to be charitable to him, I don't know if this was a mistake on his part, or maybe I'm terrible at understanding, but he said that the spiritual is the same thing as natural. And so the spiritual realm, wouldn't that mean is the same thing as the natural realm, which is the material realm? Seems like we've sort of equated the spiritual realm out of existence. Not sure on that. Also, haven't seen any evidence of a spiritual realm, or, I mean, I guess he has defined it now. He's defined it as the natural realm, which to me is the same thing as the material realm. So we need clarity here.
A couple are on a picnic. They're out in a state forest or something like that. They're on a picnic. About 50 yards away from where they're at, okay, there's a pretty tall cliff, maybe about 200 feet, okay, and it ends in some jagged rocks. They brought their 2-year-old child on the picnic with them. They unfold the blanket, take out the picnic basket, they're having their picnic. Maybe passions got heated and the husband and wife were, making out a little bit. Their kid, 2-year-old daughter, in her nice Sunday sundress or whatever, wanders off, gets to the edge of that cliff. Will gravity care if that girl goes over the edge? No. Will gravity allow her to go over the edge? Yes, it will. Gravity's not going to say this girl doesn't understand.
Destroy the child. Corrupt them all.
And she'll die if she goes
Dude,
over
you
that
almost
edge.
jump scared me. Holy shit.
She's nescient.
I was listening.
Even. Not even it.
Alex Jones jumped out at me. Holy shit. Sorry.
Oh, Alex Jones jumped out at you?
Literally jumped.
Roll up the sleeve, have the convulsion, and hail Satan.
Ignorant, innocent, and nescient. Will that law still have an effect? You damn better well believe it will. And so does natural law in the same way. It doesn't care whether you don't know. Doesn't care whether you're nescient or ignorant.
So he's equating gravity to natural law. So I think it's fair to say
it is immutable.
Gravity
immutable means that
is one of the natural laws.
Ever do can ever change it.
Nothing you can do can change it. That's important.
Because man didn't put it into effect. You know who put it into effect? The creator of the universe put it into effect. And I don't really care what you think of that force as. You could think of it as an impersonal force. You could think of it as the man with the beard. You could think of it as this remote control. I don't really care what you think of it as. Personally, that's none of my business. But you know what? If you think of it that it's man that makes the laws, then I have a problem. Because man doesn't make these laws I'm talking about. The creator of
the kid on the cliff died of COVID, just saying.
The universe set these laws into motion, put them into effect, and they bind you. You and I are bound by these laws, whether we like it or not, whether we accept it or not, whether we understand it or not. They're in effect, and you are already creating the reality that we are experiencing based upon interaction with these unseen laws. Already. You're already doing it. You can never not be doing it. That's an impossibility. Okay? You're always creating, co-creating in harmony, in cooperation, I should say. Whether it's in harmony or opposition is a different story. In cooperation with these spiritual laws that I'm going to talk about, you are already creating in cooperation with them and can never not do so as long as you exist in the physical domain. Okay? So that's what the simple definitions that we're working forward with. Natural law doesn't mean anything other than this. That's it. It means, so let's put them together. Inherent, existing conditions. Conditions that exist in nature, which are both binding and immutable. They have an effect whether they're understood or not, and they cannot be changed. So what would be our requirement of knowledge here? What do you think should be done? If we are always working with these, do you think we're going to create something that is wise to create, that is good, that is in alignment with what we say we want, if we don't know how these laws operate?
McToast brings up a good point. I was thinking about this when he says that natural law is an unseen, quote, spiritual law. When he says unseen, I don't know if he means undetectable, because gravity is certainly detectable, or if he means purposefully hidden, like occulted. I'm not sure what he means by unseen. I think go ahead.
I took it as kind of like like it's obfuscated in a way. Like we can see gravity, but we can't see what makes gravity pull things down. You know, like we can do math equations and whatnot, but we can't. But even then, we don't know what the source of gravity is, right? We call it the theory of gravity for a reason. We just know mass together makes it happen. So maybe that's how I kind of took it anyways, is that there's like a layer that keeps us from seeing the actual mechanics that cause everything to happen the way it does.
Okay.
Operate.
I think that's about as charitable as you could possibly be. So good job.
You know what's going to be created? A mess. Total chaos. Something you don't want. Something that leads to enormous suffering, which is where we're at. If, on the other hand, you have that knowledge of how these things work, then you align your behavior to them, you're going to create a whole new different ballgame. And then you're going to not have self-inflicted suffering. Okay? That's what this is all about. So let's give a working definition. This is what I call the soundbite, right? People say, well, tell me what natural law is, Mark. You have a few days? Maybe a large portion of the day like we're going to cover today. Maybe. Some people will get it. Okay? But
we're trying.
Really, you need to devote a large amount of time to studying this, understanding it, reading about it, and even experimenting with it. This is not an untestable hypothesis. Okay? And it's not a hypothesis, it's actually a law. But it's not untestable. You can test it. You can apply all the scientific methodologies to natural law. Same thing. Gather your information, observe, hypothesize, observe, test the results, publish the results. That's the scientific methodology.
Are you sure about that?
The scientific methodology will be borne out for everything I'm talking about in this presentation if it is applied. Because this is not a religion. This is not some new age mumbo jumbo. This is a science.
Enemy, bloodsucker, parasite, arrogant, pseudo-intellectual, know-it-all with your pseudo-intellectual hair and your pseudo-intellectual glasses and your pseudo-intellectual little chicken neck.
It is a science that constitutes knowledge of how laws that are existent, in operation, and immutable in this universe work, and how we are creating what we experience in conjunction with these operating laws. And man didn't put them into effect.
Powerful
Whoever
words.
created this universe put them into effect. I'm not here
This
to
is a
tell you
science.
what that is. Your job in your own personal experience is to get in touch with what you feel that is. I'm not here to tell you what that is. Now, I'm not here to tell anybody what that is. But my whole point is it created these laws, and they're in effect, And if you want to stop suffering, and if you want the human condition to change, you have to understand how these laws work. There is no way around that. Knowledge of these laws is required. And this is what people in the so-called New Age movement and in religious communities and in other communities don't want to acknowledge. They don't want to acknowledge that work is required. So let's give a working definition for natural law, my soundbite variant, okay? I tell people who want the 6 o'clock news edition of what natural law is, okay? Natural law is universal, non-man-made, binding, and immutable conditions that govern the consequences of behavior, and specifically, at least on this planet, human behavior. I would say in the universe, it governs the behavior of all intelligent beings. Intelligent beings, okay? Natural law is a body of universal spiritual laws which act as the governing dynamics of consciousness. The governing dynamics of consciousness. That's the working definition. Let's look at the dynamics between discovery and belief, the difference between discovery and belief. Because again, natural law is capable of being discovered, understood, and harmonized with. Now, does that sound like a religion? Religion asks people to believe, accept, and do without question.
I want to believe.
What this is saying this exists.
Oh. I have more Alex Jones memes than anything else, so I'll be here all day. So again, we're not rebutting anything yet. We're here. We're almost at 2 hours into his seminar. Almost 3 hours into the stream. We haven't rebutted anything yet because this is important to continue to point out. There have been no arguments made yet. We're defining terms, which is usually just a precursor to making an argument. I'm really looking forward to when we get to the arguments, but it's going to be based on a lot of language. It's probably going to take some time to tease out.
You're bound by it. The best you can do is to understand its operation like you would understand gravity, and therefore not just walk toward the edge of a 200-foot cliff that is bottomed by jagged rocks. If you're intelligent and you understand how the law of gravity works, you won't do that behavior. Okay? Just like if you're intelligent and you understand how natural law works, you won't do certain behaviors to create a prison for the entire species, for your entire species. Unfortunately, humanity has not reached that level of consciousness yet.
They're trying to build a
prison. They are not at that level. I'm sorry, go ahead.
There might also be a contradiction that we're building up towards, and I want to call it out now just to watch for it and see if it occurs. But I'm pretty sure Mark Passio is a proponent of free will, like libertarian free will. And that would appear to be in direct contradiction to this conception of natural law being this governing force over the consequences of our actions that are, are inherent, objective, non-man-made, eternal, immutable, but they manifest as human behaviors in response to interpersonal action. So like if people respond negatively to negative behavior objectively 100% of the time, as he says, then free will doesn't exist because they're operating on this deterministic natural law algorithm. So I'm not saying that's his argument. I'm just kind of throwing that out there as a potential problem.
Of co-creative intelligence to understand how these laws work and then align their behaviors to them. So natural law has nothing to do with religion. It's not a belief system. It's a science. It is a discoverable operation that is already in effect that we can either understand and align our behavior to, or remain ignorant of and suffer as a result of that ignorance because it's already in effect and already has a binding effect upon you and your behaviors and everyone's. So
he hasn't really defined in practice what this means, but based on talking to a lot of people in the other videos I've seen, he's talking about sort of the science of the science of interpersonal relations. If you treat people like shit and you're a shitty person and you do terrible things, then the people around you are going to treat you worse, and you're going to start to notice that you have negative outcomes from the people treating you worse and thinking poorly of you. And it's like you said early on, it's kind of like karma, which is like if you treat people like shit, they're going to treat you like shit. If you steal from people, then there's a chance that other people are not going to like you and are not going to want to associate with you and things like that. So as long as we're not talking objectively, as long as we're not talking about an objective science, yeah, that's just interpersonal relations between humans. But he's not making that claim. He's making the claim that this is an inherent, objective, non-man-made, eternal, immutable condition. You know, like, it is not. Go ahead.
Yeah,
sorry.
Generally speaking, no, I was waiting for you to finish. So the kind of the whole view of egoism is kind of, look, if you treat everyone like crap around you, people aren't going to want to associate with you. And that's why it's a good thing to do things that are good. It's not really that there's an inherent moral system that's coming down on you, telling you to do things. It's just, if you treat people like crap, if you steal their stuff, if you murder people, people aren't going to want to associate with you. They're not going to want to do business with you. They're not going to want you to live at their apartment complex. They're not going to want to sell you a house. You're going to be like disassociated from society. But that's not to say that if you do some of these things, people will automatically do that. That's nothing inherent in the world. There are people who get away with doing terrible things in this world. That is a fact. We've seen it happen. That bitch Carol Baggins. But to say that, but that's not to say that if you do it, you will get away with it. You could, but you probably won't.
Well, it's because he's making such a strong claim that it's so easily dispatched. He's saying it's an inherent, objective, universal, eternal, immutable. And so all we have to do to disprove that claim is to point to a single counterfactual or counterexample. Like a single counterexample disproves a claim of universal, eternal, immutable, which is so easy to do. It's almost silly. Yeah.
Yeah. That bitch.
When it comes to belief, and anybody that was trying to propagate a religion wouldn't put this
Whatever
slide
her
up
name
here.
is. I'm sorry, I don't know what her name is.
When it comes to natural law, it works just like gravity. So the clown that's going to jump over the cliff saying, I don't believe in gravity, what's going to happen? Down he goes.
Sorry.
Because belief is irrelevant. Because natural law does not care about you. It does not care about you. It is in effect, no matter what you do, deal with it. And people don't want to hear that. And I recognize this. I recognize I'm not telling anybody anything they want to hear. If I wanted to sell a lot of stuff, if I wanted to be real popular, I'd come up here and I'd tell you exactly what you want to hear, and then I'd be making $50,000 a presentation like Wayne Dyer does.
Who?
Okay? And that is his fee. I know because I've actually had some people speak to his management. That's what a new age presenter gets. You know what I ask for? 0. I don't even ask for a stipend because I don't even care about fake money. I care about making real money. Real one eye. The word money is actually one eye. And people don't even have said it a billion times in their life and never recognize what they're saying is one eye. And it's the symbol of the one eye, which represents spiritual enlightenment, is plastered all over the $1 bill. Well, this is the one.
Oh, boy.
See, I tell people, I'm a poor man when it comes to the fake money, but I'm very rich in the real stuff. The real thing, I have tons of.
Sorry, go ahead.
Fake stuff, I don't do so well with, and I don't care. It's not what I'm concerned about. I know it's fake, okay? So I don't ask for a stipend when I present. I tell whoever's setting up the presentation, pay for my travel and lodging. Hook me up with a dinner or whatever.
With fake money.
I'll come out and speak anywhere, okay? The point is, if I was trying to appeal to somebody's ego,
accept a debate,
and what they wanted to hear, I would tell you your beliefs are very important. Your beliefs shape, and they do shape your reality.
Except when somebody wants to challenge his ideas.
In a negative way, if you don't align yourself with
For free.
truth and you want to stay attached to a belief system because you prefer it over what's real, okay? So when it comes to natural law, I'm not telling people don't believe in yourself. See, people will say, there's forms of belief that are good. Yeah, I acknowledge that. I understand that. Believe in yourself. Believe in your own ability to come to this understanding of information like this. But I'm explaining when it comes to a law that is existent in the universe, your belief doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. The universe doesn't care what those parents at that picnic whose child just went over the cliff believed. It doesn't care whether.
You guys in the comments are rough as hell. He won't put out without dinner first, Patrick.
That girl doesn't know how gravity works. It's going to have an effect. You act a certain way, like a computer. Boom, you put this in, here's how you program this, that's what has to come out. Invariably. Invariably. It is nothing personal.
He's digging his own argument's grave with this invariable, 100% of the time,
force.
Universal.
It is an impersonal force that every single mystery tradition and occult tradition that has actually wanted to share this knowledge with people has been telling people about and attempting to tell people about since time immemorial. It is an impersonal force. It does not care about you. It does not worry or care in the slightest bit whether you understand it or accept it or not. It is an effect. You are bound by it. The end. And stop crying in your milk over it. That's it. No one wants to hear that. And I'm not so naive that I recognize people don't want to hear that I don't recognize that. I do recognize that. Believe me, I realize the wall I am up against in saying this. I get it fully.
Oh, yeah?
Fully.
All right.
If I wanted to blow smoke up people's rear ends, I'd come up here and I'd say, the universe cares about you and what you believe. And it's going to gauge that. It's going to look at all that and it's going to tabulate it and it's going to say, well, what did he believe when he took this action? It's not going to say that. It's going to say, is this what happened? Yes or no? Yes? Here's the result. That's it. Unwaveringly and invariably. The human ego has a hard time with that. There was some popular TV show, I don't even remember what it was. Barb had downloaded it, and she was watching an episode, and it said, humanity's greatest fear is that truth is absolute. And I usually don't bother watching any television, okay? I download a couple of shows to watch them because they're allegories, and I want to pick apart the allegory. But I wasn't even watching this one, but I heard it, my head snapped around. Whoa, that came through a network television show? How'd that happen? Humanity's greatest fear is that the truth is absolute. The ego has a hard time with the concept of any absolutes. It loves relativism. That's another part of the big trap of where we're at. Relativistic ideas. And especially when it comes to morality. We're going to talk about moral relativism. But the concept here is natural law does not require your belief to be in effect, no more than gravity requires your belief to be in effect.
Spoiler alert!
Okay? That needs to be understood. Human belief is completely irrelevant when it comes to the existence and operation of natural law, just as it is irrelevant in relation to any of the other laws of nature such as gravity, inertia, momentum, thermodynamics, or electromagnetism. Similar to such other phenomena of nature. The workings of natural law require no belief in order for them to be discovered and known. So what I'm saying is, your belief will not change natural law, but your inquiry into it can lead to an understanding of it. You can develop the knowledge of it if you are willing to open your mind and look at how these laws function and what we're getting as a result of our disharmony with them. The philosopher Soren Kierkegaard said that there are two ways to be fooled. One is to believe what is not true, and the other is to refuse to accept what is true. Okay? So, believing in untrue notions, which is what religion is, all forms of it, all the 5 religions I posted at the beginning of the presentation. Organized cultural religion, money, scientism, politics, and the New Age movement. There's the world religions, folks. People think of religion as only the cultural religions. No, there's 4 other ones. One's called government and authority, okay? Or politics, however you want to name it. The other one is money, finance. There's another religion. One of them is the New Age movement, and one of them is scientism, which I'm not going to refer to as real science because it is not. It is a belief system and a religion. So what Kierkegaard is saying here is you could believe things that aren't true, and that will hold you back. And you can refuse to accept what is true, and that will also hold you back. I say these are the only 2 ways that humanity ever creates self-inflicted suffering for itself. You want to know how suffering is created for the human species? That it doesn't need to experience? We believe what's not true. We refuse to accept what is true. That's why self-inflicted suffering exists in our species. And if we are to become wise, we need to stop doing both of those things, and then we'll stop creating suffering for ourselves. So let's look at consciousness and the human brain.
Let's move it along.
Okay? Because
please,
consciousness is an intangible force. Okay? It's something that exists, but you can't really see it. Many people even have a hard time explaining what it is. But there is physiological expressions for consciousness in the physical domain, and the brain is one of them. And of course, people will say, well, don't leave out the heart. Of course, the heart is also very important. Heart has an even bigger electromagnetic field than the brain and is tied into the physiology in an even more complex way than the brain is. But we need to understand the basic structure of the brain to understand the types of imbalances that go on within it that lead to these debilitating conditions within humanity that continue to create suffering for us.
Here it comes.
And also, what these belief systems do is they prevent the activation of the heart and the actions, of care and action. Not only do they prevent real knowledge from manifesting within the being, they prevent care, and they create apathy, and they create inaction, laziness, inaction, and cowardice, so that we don't actually act and take action based upon what we've come to know. So let's look at how the brain and consciousness actually work. People will also try to give ridiculously overcomplicated and mystified definitions of what consciousness means. And many people are even scared of the term, okay? We have to demystify these terms and bring them down to real simple English and real simple concepts that the average person can grasp, okay? And stop trying to make it more complicated than it is. Being conscious of something, meaning having consciousness of it, is an ability of the being to recognize patterns. Remember, this is all about pattern recognition. To recognize patterns and meaning with respect to events that are taking place or have taken place, okay, both within oneself, okay, in the inner realm, in the lesser realm.
What'd you say?
I said, expand your consciousness, bro. Dude, weed Lamau.
Dude, weed Lamau.
Realm of the individuated consciousness, and in the realm in which the self exists and operates, the macrocosm. So let's break it down, right? Ability of a being to recognize patterns and meaning with respect to events taking place within oneself, the microcosm, and in the macrocosmic world, the world at large. And the events taking place is the truth. So it's our ability to accurately perceive truth of what has happened and what is happening. That's consciousness. That's consciousness. And it's made way overly complicated by people. It's mostly made overly complicated in the New Age movement, again, which I can't stress enough how big of a deception it is. For people, really have to go and check out my work on the New Age deception. Okay? It's on my website. It's in the video section, and it's in the podcast section. It's a 7-hour presentation. But I'm telling you, it will be as worthwhile for you to check out as this seminar.
Okay, I probably won't be a better time. I just want to jump in real quick and say that I hate this definition with a burning passion. I'm not a neuroscientist, but I'm somewhat, I'm probably somewhere on the curve of Mount Stupid as far as my knowledge on this thing. But I have not seen a single definition from people who are qualified and who I believe to be good authorities on this topic that comes anywhere close to this. And I think he said exactly why he came up with this definition. He's trying to simplify what is an extremely complicated topic to make use of it in his later argumentation. And that's, I have a lot of qualms with that, it would be like if we were talking about gravity and you said gravity is just when things fall down. Like, well, that's not really what gravity is. That's like an oversimplification to the point where it basically becomes useless if we're going to build off of it, right?
Which definition did you not like vehemently?
Consciousness.
Oh, I see.
Consciousness in every useful sense of the term is in some way focused on identity. It's like, what is it like to be X or Y or Z? There's a really good book on consciousness. It's actually really approachable for people by Sam Harris's wife, if anybody is interested on it. I can't remember the title of it right now, but if we wrap up at the end of this, I can look it up. But it is an extremely complex topic that is very difficult to grasp. And I think dumbing it down in this case is not the best approach. I think you would just be better off just vaguely referencing to it and staying more accurate,
Jim, did you have
I was wondering why he spends so much time talking about the New Age, considering how like fringe and like small the New Age movement really is. I mean, it really is a tiny thing, unless he's trying to make the claim that the elites or something like that are basically New Agers and pushing this stuff on us through like various other means. I'm not seeing like a real connection of why there's so much time spent on the New Age. Am I missing something here?
Unknown.
I think it might be either just the types of topics he covers, and we also do have to remember that this video is a little bit dated by this point. Though I guess by philosophy standards, it's brand new, right? But so maybe this was more relevant at the time of the speech was done. So
when was this made?
8 years ago. I'd have to check.
I don't think New Age was popping 8 years ago.
Might have
maybe
been older than that. Let me see.
Yeah, maybe before we were born.
I'm just trying to be fair. Maybe there's some context we're missing is all that I'm saying. Yeah.
Maybe like the 60s or something like that. That's probably when it was at its peak. I don't run into a lot of people who start rambling off about the New Age anymore, or crystals and stuff like that.
Here's
Chakras.
my fear. I'm developing a fear now. My fear right now is that we're going to get to the end of this 8-hour seminar and there will have been no arguments. Just like a long string of definitions that imply an argument without ever giving us something to say, that's where he was wrong, right there. That's where it was. We're a couple hours in. I'm worried. That's my fear that's developing. He's not chaining these together. He's just giving us he's asserting a bunch of definitions of words and not saying this, therefore this conclusion. Like, we're not getting an argument.
Yeah. I did see the comment section of this video, and because I was just kind of like, okay, when is he going to get into the actual meat of the substance? And there were people going like, okay, his argument for natural rights starts at like 3 hours and 30 minutes or something like that. And so I ended up just fast forwarding to that part and just like, all right, let's go. Just listen to that part.
Well,
and then it just, okay.
Good. All right, cool. I have hope then.
There's something. All right.
We have 8 minutes left in part 1.
Does consciousness express? There's a difference between what it is and how it expresses in our life. Consciousness expresses. I ask people, just tell me, what are the ways you could ever make yourself known to any other being? How can any other being come to know who you are in this incarnation, in this physical manifestation. How could they possibly come to know you? How could you manifest yourself or make yourself known to them? And there's only three ways: thoughts, emotions, and actions. Okay? And I would say speech falls into the line of the combination of thoughts and emotions. And speech is also a form of action. I'm using force to, make the air flow over my vocal cords to make sounds come out so that you can hear what the concepts I'm trying to express. So it is a form of action. And it derives from what we have thought up to this point and the emotions that we have, and we could express it through speech. So thought, emotion, and action. Thought you have to look at as the creative force that is the expression for consciousness.
I've noticed that our note taking has stopped because it seems he's stopped. It's because he stopped. Yeah, he stopped really like laying anything that feels like a foundation for an argument. So I've stopped taking notes.
In the physical domain, it had to first exist as a thought. This computer, somebody had to envision all the parts, how it works, how it's put together. Okay, this camera equipment, the clothes you're wearing, the seats. Everything that exists had to first exist in the realm of thought. Had to. By law. Then it comes into physical manifestation through action. Your emotions are a polarized component.
So he's saying that everything that exists came into consciousness through thought first. So a computer, chair, and everything. But is he talking specifically about inventions? Or things that man created, or is he talking about everything? So are you talking about like a rock?
This is the kind of question this is why I invite people on the show to have discussions, because we can't know. Like, it would seem we also have a contradiction here between spirit and body, because he said spiritual is natural and natural is body. So it seems like we're talking about the same thing. It's like, what are we doing here? Like, we can't know. He won't talk about it. It's frustrating.
You could look
we can guess, but like any criticism that we come up with is going to feel somewhat disingenuous because we can't be sure our criticism is even hitting the mark. Like, I intend to approach this genuinely, not trying to strawman him. I'm not here to take shots and win points.
Yeah, that's why I asked it in the form of a question. It wasn't like a statement. Like, you're wrong. Rocks. No, I want to know.
Yeah.
Is he saying that there's like a higher power that created everything consciously and said like, okay, we want a rock here. We're going to make a volcano here that'll eventually make more rocks here.
And if everything was created by thought first, what created natural law?
Perhaps he'll explain more later. I guess that's what we'll have to go with.
And what created the thoughts that created the natural law?
It is a feminine aspect of consciousness. Because other people don't feel your emotions. They could perceive or sense them. You're the one who's feeling the emotions in your physiology.
Don't care about
it's
your feelings.
An internal expression. You feel emotions inwardly, inside in the physiology. Hence, this is a feminine expression for consciousness. It is something that is not externalized and put out. It is something that is felt within. So the emotions in the mind-body-spirit connection are the spirit in which we do something. Okay, so that's the feminine force or the spirit. Of course, thoughts are within our mind, hence that's the mind component of the consciousness. Then there's a marriage between them. Okay, so you could look at thoughts as the creative essence, which then blends with or marries to the feminine. Now, see, we're getting into a notion that is taught in many different religious traditions. It's called the Trinity. And I challenge anybody, go and look in any of the trinities that exist, in any of the religions. You can go back to Babylon. You can go to the Indus Valley traditions. You can go to the Egyptian and Cometian traditions, the Christian traditions. Every single religious tradition that is talked of a Trinity, okay, it is always a Father Creator, a sacred feminine figure, okay, of some kind that the Father then impregnates or inseminates in some form, and then
getting
from
lewd.
that
What's happening?
I said, oh, it's getting
I'll
lewd.
see you at the feast tonight. Oh, we'll have lots of blood and semen. Oh, good.
offspring is born a male child. Always. Okay? What we're talking about here is the father being the mind, the creative essence, then the spirit or the emotions being the sacred feminine essence. Okay? Or the Holy Spirit.
This is not going to be part of any arguments later. I
And
feel like
then
this is...
the child.
No, so you
the
don't understand,
male
okay?
Child
See?
is behavior.
A triangle
It is
is a stable shape. It can't be anything else than what it is. Okay?
Oh.
It's a stable shape, right? A square is a flip-flopper. It can fall to the left, it can fall to the right, and eventually become a parallelogram.
Well, thank you.
Based.
Thoughts, deep thoughts. Or like deepity.
or masculine.
Is that the name? These are deepities, right? Is that the word for them? Like, we're talking about things that seem profound, but this is mostly nonsense. Like, not to be offensive, but like none of this, I can't imagine this having any bearing on anything, but okay.
Principle that actually interacts with the physical world to change it. And hence, that is the only way to actually save ourselves. And again, people in religious thinking will immediately attack this and say, you're saying that saving ourselves will not come through faith. Yes, I am.
Kathy Newman.
Saving
so
ourselves will only come through action. Action will save humanity. Faith will not do it. So sorry to again, smash another egoic attachment that people have to religious notions. But these religions are created by the control system. Okay? People don't understand that exoteric Christianity is created by the dark occult, of the ancient dark occult mystery schools. They don't understand where this religion came from.
It's all the same religion, man.
Theology.
It's all astrology, I'm telling you.
Good concepts in any religion.
Horus was born on
I say
December
take all the
25th.
good concepts and leave the nonsense. Because one of the nonsense is that you need to believe in something to be saved from the current human condition. You don't need to believe in a thing. You need to know the truth. And right in their own religion, there it is. Let me just stay on this for a moment, because in their own scripture, the exoteric Christian scriptures, what is the one prescription that the Christ figure gives to the people when he is asked about freedom? He's only asked about freedom like once in the Gospels, okay? In the words attributed to his teachings. And they want to know what will save us, what will make us free, and what is his prescription?
Truth shall make you free.
No, that is not.
Idiot!
There's something missing there.
Idiot!
What are you, retarded? So, what are you, Down syndrome?
You fuckhead. That is the stupidest thing you interpreted there.
You doubled down and got double retarded. You got super stupid on your own.
Okay. I fully understand what you're trying to tell me. I'm telling you, no. Hell no. Okay, fuck yourself, retard.
Yeah, you really shut him down there, man. He just hit him.
Will set you free. Are you kidding me?
All right.
Wait, hold on. One more.
Cool it with the anti-Semitic remarks.
Okay.
All right. I got to hear the shoot down again. Here we go.
He's only asked about freedom like once in the Gospels, okay? In the words attributed to his teachings. And they want to know what will save us, what will make us free, and what is his prescription?
Truth shall make you free.
No, that is not. There's something missing there. You're close.
Cool it with the anti-Semitic remarks.
What is the actual saying? Know the truth. Knowing the truth will make you free. That's the prescription, even in exoteric Christianity. It's right there in the Gospels. But Christians don't want to hear that, because The controllers in the church who came from the dark priest class gave them this nonsense that all you have to do is believe and everything will magically change. Well, good luck with that. When people's behaviors have no alignment with morality, you think your belief's going to change something? Again, let me know how that works out for you. And again, I'm not mincing words up here. I'm telling it like it really is. I don't care who it offends. So, the expressions for consciousness are thoughts, emotions, and actions which are likened to, in the consciousness community, of mind, spirit, and body. And it's a trinity. A father creator, which is the thoughts, the mind, the feminine essence, which is the mother of the trinity, the emotions, the inward aspects, the spirit. And then they give birth. When the thoughts and the emotions come together, they give birth to action in the world, which is the male child. This is very important to understand. I hope everybody is clear. This is our internal trinity, which constitutes the expressions for consciousness. Okay?
Says the guy
so
in the
let's
onesie.
move on. Yes. Okay, how much time? It is. Okay, we're going to stop right there and take a break. We will
Part
resume
one.
at 1.
Part 1 is complete. How are you guys feeling?
Actually, I'm feeling pretty good. I mean, so my hope is.
Well, it doesn't matter how you're feeling because feelings don't change reality. Got him.
Damn it. Got led right into that one.
Yep.
I'm hoping this was all the setup for the real meat in parts 2 and 3. That's what I'm really hoping for. Because if it was, that'd be great. And all this note taking and attention that we've been paying will hopefully pay off in spades. So I really hate to think that we could have just skipped part 1 and moved straight into part 2. But I don't think so. I have hope. that this will matter.
I think we could have, like, if we had been handed a definition sheet with a list of definitions, so that we could have saved 2.5 hours. But,
I mean, like Scientology.
What?
I mean, like Scientology, how they're always big about definitions and everything has like a huge glossary.
Yep.
Like, oh, I don't understand this word. Go back and read it. Oh, I disagree with that statement. I must have an uncleared word, and you go look up the definitions for all those words. Yeah, we could do that.
Do we want to do a quick bathroom break and stretch our legs for a sec?
Yeah, definitely. I'm trying to think if I have any thoughts, but I think I've already expressed them as we went. So, all right, guys, we're gonna take let's do 3 minutes.
Okay,
cool.
Keep this train rolling. Play some music or something again here. Let's see.
Can you hear, can you hear, can you hear my voice? Coming through, coming through, coming through the noise.
Man, I wish I could smoke in my apartment.
John Cox says this music, and Adam says you have to listen to the entire album to understand. That's hilarious. Sorry about your neighbors, phobes. All right.
I don't know why. I just want to say this Nordic guy, he keeps calling me a hobbit, but like I'm like 6'3". I mean, look, the hobbits are some of the most interesting characters in the Lord of the Rings, so I'm not going to take that as an insult, even though I know you're planning to make it one. So,
well, that guy's been nothing but insults, no arguments at all. He just rants in the comments like we care. Like we're here for philosophy, man. Like, do you understand that? To a philosopher, an insult is like a null statement. It's just nothing. There's nothing there to even respond to. Like,
not an argument.
Like,
I've been trying to be so nice too. I've been trying to be so nice.
Like, Justin's earlier comment about me being like biased and not wanting to learn this stuff. That was more insulting to me as a philosopher than all this inane name calling bullshit. Like. Keep that up. Do that all you want. I don't give a shit. It's the same thing as not typing.
Of course!
And I had that meme and I missed it.
Not an argument.
I love it.
It's the best. Did you create that? Who created that?
I don't know. I found it on YouTube.
All right.
This is my favorite, though.
What are you, retarded? So I know you're not retarded.
I use it every chance I get.
But what are you, Down syndrome?
All right.
Adam Sikosin, The Hobbit 2022, The Coconut Quest. I'm never going to live that video down, I swear.
You should put me down on the bottom so we can kind of look like, what is it, Mystery Science Theater 3000?
All right. Let me get this started, and then I will. I'll do that while we're watching.
Okay.
I got to make sure and turn the
keep this freaking
freaking volume down. Let's see. There we go.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. I hope everybody had a really good lunch and is energized.
This is part 2, 3.5 hours long. Let's do this.
Guys, for the afternoon session. I'm going to go until about 3:20 p.m. In the first part of this, and we'll take a 10-minute break there.
How about
and then we'll start in
4:20?
again about 3:30, and we'll go until 5, and then we'll come to our dinner break. So let's pick up where we left off. I was talking about brain structure and human behavior and how these two things are completely interrelated. Brain health plays a critical role in human behavior, so it is extremely important for human beings to become familiar with the brain's basic structure and function. Now, I'm not telling you that this is the totality of neuroscience, what I'm going to show you here today. I'm saying that this is the basics. It's the essence of how the brain structure works. So this is part of understanding the physiological aspects of how consciousness works, all right? So there's 3 main complexes, structures, that comprise the total human brain. The first is the R complex, or the reptilian brain. So this part of the brain facilitates basic survival functions. It's the part of the brain that goes to work and becomes active when we're in what's called fight or flight mode, okay? When survival is at stake. It also controls basic motor functions and respiration, okay? The second part of the brain is above the R complex. This is called the limbic system. It's also known as the mammal brain, the mammalian brain. This part of the brain facilitates human emotions, and it makes human emotion possible to be felt in the physiology. It does this by releasing what's known as neuropeptides into the bloodstream through different glands that comprise the limbic brain, or what's called the midbrain also. So the final part of the brain, the highest structure structurally, and the newest part of the brain evolutionarily, it's called the neocortex. Now really what this part of the brain is really called is the telencephalon. That's what we traditionally think of as the gray matter of the brain, okay, with the hemispheres, okay? The neocortex is where all of the actual electrochemical activity that comprises our human modes of thought takes place, and that's in the outer shell of the telencephalon, which is known as the neocortex. So this part of the brain actually facilitates all human functions of thought, what we consider the things in thought that make us a human being and separate us from the animal kingdom. Higher thought functions, logic, intuition, creativity, okay? So we'll break down these parts of the brain and give you some visual understanding of them. So down here, down here is the reptilian brain. It's comprised of the brain stem right here, and this part of the brain is called the cerebellum, okay? These two components together essentially comprise the R complex. So again, the R complex is the lowest consciousness part of the brain. We don't do any thinking with this part of the brain. It's the reactive part of the brain. It reacts to stimulus. It's the stimulus response mechanism. Now up here in this middle part of the brain, these are all the different glands like the hypothalamus, the thalamus, the pituitary and pineal glands, etc., that comprise the midbrain or the limbic system. All human emotions are facilitated, are made possible by this part of the brain, okay? So this part of the brain, if it wasn't working properly, you would not be able to experience a normal range of human emotions. This is part of what psychopathy is. Psychopaths, this part of the brain is not functioning properly, whether it be from a birth disorder or whether it be from conditions over one's life that if someone has stayed in chronically has numbed out this part of the brain and it is not functioning properly anymore, so the person's not actually experiencing a normal range of emotions. This part of the brain, which again is the telencephalon,
mental illness isn't real.
This gray matter part with all of the grooves, etc. That's the neocortex. The neocortex is the outer casing, basically, of the telencephalon, the higher brain. It's the human brain, okay? Neo means new, so it's the newest part of the brain structure as far as evolutionary development of the human being goes. So this part of the brain facilitates all higher order thinking. Now,
Do it.
What you have to understand about the telencephalon,
it's not new because it was named that. It's named that because it was new.
Is that they're first of all bilaterally symmetrical, and they generally control different functions of thought. Now, I'm not telling you it's 100%. Neuroscience is more complicated than that, okay? But in general, the left hemisphere of the brain is what governs logic, analytical thought, and scientific and mathematical thinking, and also linear thought processes, okay? Physical world tasks and details, being able to break things down and analyze them, all right?
I don't believe this is the
case.
So
this is taking things apart, breaking them down into smaller components, and analyzing the pieces. That's what the left brain does.
I think this was popular science circa 20 years ago. I don't think this is true.
Okay, it has to go into this part first, then here, and then here, and then we can spit out the output. A linear process, like a series processor, okay? The right side of the brain, the right hemisphere, governs or generally facilitates and makes possible human creativity, our emotional makeup, okay, all the emotional dynamics of the human being, holistic thought, being able to see the big picture thinking, pattern recognition, and then things like compassion, nurturing, care, okay? Ethics to a large extent. And I would say ethical thinking comes from a balance between the two, as we're going to get into. Now, if this left part of the brain here becomes chronically dominant, the masculine part of the brain, and again, I'm putting these symbols here. This is an ancient archetypal symbol called the blade. It's a simple upward pointing triangle. And this downward pointing triangle is an
Yeah, Executioner says, wait a minute, wasn't this debunked by neurology circa 10 years ago? Left is creative, right is math. My shaft is emotional. I mean,
Don't make it sound like a fucking fat, plumpy, delicious cock.
There was a study in 2013 reported on by Harvard, happened at the University of Utah. The brain scans, they looked at the brain scans of 1,000 people between the ages of 7 and 29, divided different areas of the brain into 7,000 regions to determine whether one side of the brain was more active or connected than the other side. No evidence of, quote, sidedness was found. The authors concluded that the notion of some people being more left-brained or right-brained is more a figure of speech than an anatomically accurate description. And look, that I think is a valid criticism of the scientific statements that he's making, but as far as like the figure of speech,
it's an analogy.
Yeah, like it could be an analogy. You could still conceptually have a person that was, in his opinion, unbalanced, too rational, too unfeeling, or the opposite. You could have somebody that was too much in their feels and didn't, think about things rationally enough. And so whether or not the physiology is there, yeah, go ahead.
It's kind of like RK selection theory, like how there's two different types. There's like the ones that like nurture their young, and then there's one that has like a bunch of different types of young, and they just hope that the fittest survive. Like there's not really like RK people, RNK people. That's just in fact, RK selection theory is actually like largely debunked, but it's a good analogy for talking about the types of people who vote in certain ways or have particular political interests, right?
Yep. So that was my point. I think he's got the science wrong, but as an analogy, it's still functional, I suppose. Okay. Yeah.
I just wanted to say, I think it's interesting how like 50% of the stuff we've listened to has just been like disqualifying people from understanding the natural law, if not more than 50%. It's just a minor observation I'm making.
And we've had people in the comments saying atheists can't understand this. Literally that statement. Imagine saying that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was a religionist for quite some time, so
same.
I guess my ability to understand certain concepts is
What'd you say, Christian?
Yeah, I think all three of us here at one point were religious to some extent, right?
Well, I'm religious now,
but
I just don't believe in I'm an atheist.
Sorry.
X-Crasmus says he studied 25 years ago, sliced many brains, and attended hundreds of neurosurgeries. This is incredibly nonsense. It already was back then.
Fair enough.
Another ancient archetypal symbol that was referred to in the ancient world as the chalice, the cup, etc. Okay? And this was a rudimentary phallic symbol, and this was a rudimentary womb symbol, representing the male and the female, or the masculine and feminine, more accurately, components of the consciousness. The idea is to keep a balance between these two. When we have a balance between the two, that's when we're operating on all cylinders, so to speak.
Hermaphroditic
That's when
Jews.
Real consciousness and pattern recognition is developed. And that's when real morality and ethical considerations are also
Cool it with the anti-Semitic remarks.
Within the being. If this part of the brain is chronically dominant, the left part of the brain, okay, what happens is the right side of the brain is imbalanced. It's not really functioning at a higher level, okay? And the limbic brain will actually suffer that effect, okay? It will also start to shut down. So you will have a lot of left brain patterns going on and a lot of left brain processing going on. But if that's all that's happening and we're not using this part of the brain equally, the R complex of the brain is what essential executive functions are going to be routed to. We're going to be living from the R complex in a kind of stimulus response only mode instead of living from a holistic brain balanced mode, which is when we're in that balanced state, the neocortex, which governs higher order thinking and makes higher order thinking and ethical thinking possible, is what rules the personality. Okay? Now, conversely, if the right side of the brain is chronically dominant, so let's put it this way. The left side of the brain being chronically dominant, you have the controller. That's the master mentality. The right side of the brain being chronically dominant, that's the slave mentality. That's the I won't stand up for myself and I'll just accept everything. The total new ager, in other words. Okay? So this part of the brain, if it's chronically dominant, the opposite happens with the structures of the brain. The R complex will shut down. It will suffer. Okay? It will not work properly, which the R complex is necessary. It makes you stand up for yourself when you're under attack. Again, it's the fight-flight response. In a dangerous situation, you've got to know whether you're going to fight whatever's attacking you or whether you're going to get out of dodge and run away. Okay? That's a survival mechanism that's necessary when there's danger. So when this part of the brain is chronically imbalanced, the R complex gets shut down. People freeze, essentially, and they don't stand up for themselves and take action. What's happening is they're being ruled by their emotions. And again, the limbic brain governs all emotions, positive and negative. So that's compassion and that's fear. It's any possible human emotion. The midbrain is what's ultimately facilitating that emotion in the physiology. All right? So if this part of the brain is chronically dominant, the opposite happens. You go into slave think, you shut down, you freeze, you're ruled by the emotions, and you don't stand up for yourself. So, the neocortex, in a dangerous situation, you've got to know whether you're going to fight whatever's attacking you or whether you're going to get out of dodge and run away. Okay? That's a survival mechanism that's necessary when there's danger. So, when this part of the brain is chronically imbalanced, the R complex.
Okay, so earlier on, he made it very clear and repeatedly clear throughout this presentation so far that facts don't care about your feelings, that natural law isn't affected by your feelings can't modify or determine natural law. So what he's saying is that the right brain has nothing to do with understanding, conceptualizing, or functioning with natural law, because that's all the feels, right? Is this a fair statement?
Yeah.
Seems to be that way.
Okay.
Let's get shut down. People freeze, essentially, and they don't stand up.
This is an analogy. This is not, even if the science is wrong, the analogy is correct.
Yeah, no, I'm just, yeah. So even if the analogy is correct, but he's talking about a chronically imbalanced left brainer that doesn't have any right brain. Well, according to him earlier, that wouldn't affect my ability to comprehend or act in accordance with natural law. But if I was chronically right-brained, it would, because feelings can't really help in that area, right?
And facts don't care about your feelings.
What bothers me about just accepting it as an analogy, and look, I'm getting a little ahead of myself here, but maybe he will just drop it. But it sounds like he's going to build up, because he was just talking about how an imbalance can affect your limbic system and your emotional responses to threats and stuff like that. And it sounds like he's going to make the case that these physical effects of an imbalance on your brain function is going to have ramifications as far as this whole greater natural law concept is concerned. Which means at that point, we can't just take it as an analogy anymore. So that's why in the notes, I'm writing down when he makes these very real physical effects that these very allegedly real physical imbalances have on the function of the brain. So I do think it's important to keep in mind, but you are correct. There is still an underlying analogy one could run with. And that's just me I'm being charitable here. That's just what he's saying.
Trying to be as charitable as possible, yeah.
Same. Look, this video would be a hell of a lot more entertaining if we just spent 12 hours of our life taking shots at it.
Nitpicking everything.
Believe me, this would be way more fun.
Yeah.
We'd probably have a lot more viewers if we did that. But no, I'm actually trying to treat this fairly. Okay.
Checkmate.
For themselves and take action. What's happening is they're being ruled by their emotions. And again, the limbic brain governs.
We'll do the stream again tomorrow where we do the shit-taking one, right? No, I'm just kidding.
Positive and negative.
That's fine.
That's compassion and that's fear. It's any possible human emotion. The midbrain is what's ultimately facilitating that emotion in the physiology. All right? So if this part of the brain is chronically dominant, the opposite happens. You go into slave think, you shut down, you freeze, you're ruled by the emotions, and you don't stand up for yourself. So...
Here's the problem. Here's the thing, is that one of the number one criticisms I've gotten in response to my criticisms of Passio's work is that you don't understand, Patrick. your left brain imbalanced, which is gaslighting, first of all. And so I'm curious to see if that argument that I'm getting from Passio's followers comes from Passio himself, or if it was just his followers. Let's spoiler alert, I know which it is, but I'll let you guys wait and find out.
The too long didn't read version of that statement was,
"Shut up, bitch."
Yep.
I mean, oh my God, we're being invaded by South American walruses.
The neocortex of the brain has two hemispheres. The left brain largely facilitates logic and scientific thought, while the right brain hemisphere largely facilitates creativity and compassion. When both hemispheres are in balance, the neocortex acts in its proper role as the executive command center of the whole human brain. And that's when true intelligence is born. Now, true intelligence is a concept that I think more people really have to understand. People have equated intelligence with intellect, especially in the Western society. All right? Intellect is not intelligence. Let me say that again. Intellect is not intelligence. Intelligence comprises more than intellect. Intellect is left brain understanding. True intelligence is holistic understanding, with the right brain included in the process, the nurturing, compassionate, creative, and intuitive sides of the consciousness together with the intellectual aspect of the consciousness.
All those attributes that natural law doesn't give a shit about, and that all those attributes that can't even affect the discussion of natural law. Yeah, it's important to have balance with those. Okay.
And you can see this in the word. Intelligence.
Oh, shit.
Right? Intella is where intellect comes from. Okay? And gens, G-E-N-C-E, comes from the Latin verb generare. Generare means to generate or to create. So it's the creative aspect of the personality, or the right brain. So intellect plus creativity, logical thinking plus nurturing and compassion. That's real intelligence, holistic intelligence. And most people in our society are not in holistic intelligence. They're in one form of brain imbalance or the other. So let's look at how this manifests. If a human being's left brain hemisphere becomes chronically dominant, the R complex will take over executive function of the brain, and the person will become ruled by selfishness and base desires. And they will develop a personality that is based in domination and control. Conversely, if a human being's right brain hemisphere becomes chronically dominant, the limbic system will take over executive function of the whole brain, and the person will become ruled by their own emotions and develop a personality that is based in submissiveness and naivete. Okay? The slave think mentality. The schism of the individual. Okay? And this is critical, because this is not only a schism within the individual consciousness, it's a schism of worldview, of the way we view ourselves in the world and the way we view our relationship to others in the world. So I call this the mental schism. And it highlights basically what will happen, what kinds of thinking will manifest when certain types of brain imbalance are present. So when we're in this schism, and again, most of humanity is, if we're overly intellectualizing everything and we're too much in the masculine hemisphere of the brain, okay, we're not using the right or intuitive capacities of the brain, the right brain hemisphere. What this can lead to in the world is, again, rigid skepticism. Now, what did we say about that? It's not conducive to learning. People aren't really going to learn when they're rigidly skeptical. This is a hallmark of scientism. Scientismists, I don't know what other thing to call it, worshipers of the altar of scientism, okay? They have this rigid skepticism because they're purely intellectual. They're not really intelligent. The creative aspect is missing from their personality makeup, okay? Atheism is a hallmark of overly dominant left.
Is there another way of coming to knowledge other than reason and evidence? Not that I'm aware of. So I think this is an assertion on his part that isn't backed up.
Maybe he would claim rationalization requires creativity. I don't know. I'm trying, man.
I'm trying to steel man rigid skepticism into something that I would disagree with a person being. Like, even a rigid skeptic would still be convinced by sufficient reason and evidence.
Yeah,
otherwise they're not a skeptic. If they're something else, maybe they're religious, for example, then they wouldn't be convinced by reason and evidence.
Do you think that he's using rigid skepticism as like a stand-in for cynicism? Because for someone to just be like, "Oh, I just disbelieve everything," do you think that's what he's trying to say, but he's just not putting it down right? I'm trying to be as charitable as possible.
That's exactly what I was about to say. I think he's conflating the two a lot.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm not capable of that level of charitableness. I think he's taking a shot at people that are doing to him what we're doing here today. Like, I think that is his dismissal of what we're doing right now, which is applying standards of evidence and reason to what I'm waiting to see his arguments. And it's gaslighting to say, well, you're so rigidly skeptic that you're not going to be able to understand. You're so left brain imbalanced that you can't understand what I'm trying to say.
No.
Not an argument. Thinking, because that shuns all aspects of spiritual reality. There is no spirit.
Nothing wrong with social Darwinism. Fight me.
Accident. From there you get things like solipsism. People will say, "Well, isn't solipsism purely left brain?" No, it is right. It is right brain. I'm sorry. Is it purely right brain? And I say no. It is left brain imbalance as well.
Google searches is another path to knowledge. That's funny.
Solipsism can be generated from both forms of imbalance, of believing nothing can actually be known. There is no truth. Truth is a dirty word to many left brain individuals. You'll note.
What?
So solipsism plays into left brain imbalance as well. All of these states here inevitably lead to these things down here. Moral relativism comes next. The idea that there's no such thing as the difference between right and wrong, that we just get to make those things up. They don't exist inherently in nature. We just can decide on.
That's not what moral relativism is.
I hate when people mix subjectivism and relativism. I hate it.
Yeah, it's not the same thing. Like, moral relativism is to say, like, okay, so slavery is bad. Homosexuality is not bad. But, if you live in some of these Middle Eastern countries, they believe that slavery is okay and homosexuality should be people who, throw it out of it. Then that's okay because they live in a different culture. That's what moral relativism is, to have different standards for different places and different times.
Level one distinctions. Sorry. That's just one that really bugs me, and I hear it all the time. All kinds of people. Okay, so. And
not to say that either of them are good. I'm just saying that's what it is. They're both,
No, Rising Sun, I don't think experience is a path to knowledge. I think experience on its own has deep capacities for flaws and biases and problems. You have to take your experience and your sense data, and you have to apply rigid, unbiased processes to it, methodologies to it. That's the path to... You have all that left brain nonsense. That's what you need.
Well, and then in Passio's defense, he talked about this in the distinction between truth and perception. Experience is just a perception. Yeah. So
what's right and what's wrong for ourselves and make it up, randomly. So very, very dangerous ideology, which we're going to be talking about a lot. Social Darwinism inevitably comes after that.
With that.
All right? This is the idea that a certain class of society can get to direct how the lives of everybody else will go because they're the intelligentsia, so-called, okay? We're the intellectual people, really is what it is, the over-intellectualizing. And we'll direct society because we're the fittest. Like Darwinism postulates the survival of the fittest. Well, social...
Faith, Liberty, and Praxis donates $5. He says, Jesus Christ, this stream is still going. Yeah, it's going to be going for a while.
Keep on going. We're not even halfway done.
Not only wrong. You're immoral.
So, I mean, well, now you got that clip, so you can play it. Social Darwinism is not like justification of of governments and stuff like that. It's just basically saying like, hey, look, if you're weak and stupid and you're reliant on other people, you probably shouldn't get very far in life. Whereas somebody who is a little bit more stronger and smarter, who is more able, they're probably going to do better in life. And that's okay. We shouldn't punish people for doing well, and we shouldn't reward people for doing bad. That's pretty much it.
Darwinism postulates the survival of the most socially ruthless. And many people believe that's the natural order. They believe that's the natural order, and nothing could be farther from the truth. What that is it's the psychopathic chaos. It has nothing to do with nature, and it has nothing to do with order. It's the exact opposite. So, this state, and these are hallmarks of dark occultism.
That is the stupidest thing you interpreted there.
I think I should know a thing or two about it, as I was a priest in it for almost 10 years. I might know a couple of things about Satanism. Okay? So, moral relativism is one of the big tenets of Satanism. It's actually one of the pillars of Satanism.
No, it's not.
Social Darwinism is highly praised and
Citation
valued.
needed.
Oh, please digress.
Citation needed. There is nothing. I can pull out the book right now. I can pull out the satanic sentiments. I can pull out all of the commandments. They're not going to say anything about moral relativism. That does have morals and beliefs that are codified in it that are true across the board. There's nothing moral relativist about Satanism.
But what
now,
about
maybe
Satan?
It may be true.
What about Satanists in Africa?
True. Well, there's only one Satanism. Satanism did not exist as a codified religion until 1966 by Anton LaVey. Now, you could say, well, I was in the Satanic Temple, but Satanic Temple, by their own admission, were a kind of like a group of trolls. Like if you know what the Yes Men are, I don't know if you're familiar with the Yes Men.
No,
they're kind of like a progressive group that goes around and they kind of troll people. They pretend to be various organizations or fake organizations to get people to say stupid things, kind of like a troll. And that's what they started out as. And then once they started getting really big, then they started deleting stuff from their website saying that they actually worship Satan. And they're like, oh no, we're an actual religion. Yeah, so maybe, but yeah, Satanism is LaVeyan Satanism is kind of like saying Sharia law. We're basically saying law. It's a redundant term. Satanism is LaVeyanism. But anyways.
And it's not what most religious people think it is either.
No.
In Satanism and eugenics. Okay? Because if people don't understand what eugenics is basically people, who have gone so deep into this form of left brain imbalance that they believe they're God and they can get to decide who lives and who dies. That's really what it is. We will control who breeds and who does not get to breed, who gets to live and who does not get to live. All right? That's essentially eugenics in a nutshell. And again, these are all authoritarianism, forms of authoritarianism. Okay? And it's the idea that man is the author. Man is the creator. Man is the God. Man will make the law. Man will decide who, life and death at any given moment. We will decide what's right and wrong, etc. That's essentially what all of these forms of thought are. Extreme left-brained imbalance. And I was there. I was in this state in my life. I was in it for years. All right? Let's look at the other form of imbalance. If the right side of the brain is chronically dominant, this leads to, similar kind of imbalance, but in the exact opposite form. The brain is still completely imbalanced, therefore the person's not in a high state of consciousness. They're completely unconscious to what's really going on within them and around them. But the manifestation is generally the opposite of the left brain forms of imbalance. So if you're in real right brain imbalanced state of consciousness, this will lead to naivete, believing anything you're told, accepting things from quote unquote official channels and official sources without actually checking into them for yourself. Blind belief. You'll believe the next religion that comes along. We just have to tell them what they want to hear, and I'll believe that. So, New Agers are basically in this category: naivete and blind belief. People who trust government, of course, are in that category because, again, it's about creating the masters and the slaves. That's what brain imbalance is for. And that's why the controllers want to propagate this imbalance and keep it in place. Again, religious extremism, that's hallmarks of right brain belief, right brain imbalance. Solipsism, no such thing as truth, all from right brain imbalance as well. Feelings of unworthiness, self-loathing.
It's on both sides? What?
Solipsism?
Solipsism is on, it's on both sides. Okay.
Accepting orders from other people, being an order follower.
If you're galaxy brain, you think nothing is real. If you're emotionally brained, you think nothing's real. Okay.
I wonder how many of these other things could exist on both sides. Eugenics could definitely be a feels-based position. Authoritarianism for sure. Moral relativism for sure. Theism for sure. Atheism for sure. Scientism. Yeah, like, I don't know. I'm not finding a lot of utility in this section.
And how this is the exact opposite of anything virtuous. For people that believe order following is some kind of a virtue, I don't know what to tell you. But it's the thing that leads to all evil in the world, is accepting somebody's orders and not actually gauging for yourself whether the activity, the behavior is moral or not. Okay? And it creates a willing slave. This form of imbalance is ultimately generating a willing slave, whereas this form of imbalance is ultimately generating a psychopathic master. And they're all forms of mind control. It's just another aspect of how mind control works. The propagators of mind control are just doing this to keep that imbalance present in one form or another. They don't even care which it is. As long as they have some that are imbalanced toward one direction and some imbalanced toward the other direction, that's how the dynamic plays off against itself. And you have a world that is continue to be kept under lockdown. So let's look at the worldview schism that goes hand in hand with the brain schism or the mental schism.
Just want to point out again, we're still 100% assertion. We are not in an argument yet. This is all just assertion, 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 assertion. Right up and into including free will just now.
Again, this is worldview is exactly what it says. How do you view the world? How do you view yourself in it? How do you view others in it? Well, when there's chronic left brain dominance, the worldview that emerges is one of randomness. And again, this is a hallmark of scientism. The world is this grand cosmic accident. All right? The whole universe is a grand accident. There's no purpose. Right? There's no creator. Everything just magically manifested on its own for no reason from a single singularity, a single point in space-time for no reason. You give me that one, and I'll tell you everything else that happened after that. But you got to give me that one, And I have some bridges to sell you, So, there's no underlying intelligence in nature. Nature is dead. That's what this worldview is about. Nature is dead. It's a dead thing. It's a mechanized machine that is there for no reason. Okay? There's no such thing as the spirit at all. No such thing as spiritual dimension. No such thing as natural law, certainly. Because for one to accept natural law, well, where does it come from? I ask people like whether they accept that natural law exists or that, there's actual objective truth and morality, and like 2/3 of people don't accept it. They don't believe that it exists. They don't think there is objective reality and objective truth and objective morality. They think it's all relative and we get to make it up. I've actually done a psychological, small psychological profiling or study, just asking people this question at random and collecting results and analyzing them.
Those are very different topics.
Who are moral relativists.
What'd you say?
The objective reality and objective morality are two completely different things. Completely different things. And I don't know. Why would he lump them in as like the same question? I don't get it. I think most people would agree there's objective I think most people will probably say, oh, objective reality exists. Maybe objective morality doesn't exist. I think those are very different questions, very different topics, actually.
I think it's
just because reality is real.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, talking over each other. Oh, I was just saying, just because reality is real doesn't mean that there is anything binding moral questions. Like that doesn't necessarily have to be in that equation. Yeah.
I mean, again, maybe I'm the least charitable one in the room, but I feel like that's the entire underlying thing that's trying to be smuggled in.
Yeah.
Like, smuggling in premises like this is why it takes 4 hours to lay the foundation for the beginning of your talk.
And believe that truth is relative also, that it's not objective. Okay? Now, you ask the same people, do you believe in karma? 88, almost 90% of people believe karma is real and it exists. So I'm like, I can't believe this. You're going to tell me that there's no such thing as the real difference between right and wrong. They're constructs in the human mind is what they think, right? And simultaneously holding in their mind the idea that karma exists. Well, I asked them the question, what put karma in place then? You believe it exists. What force created it? What made it? What put it in place? And they have no answer for that. You know, they intuitively believe karma exists, but can't answer where did it come from, because that would involve a creator. And somebody in left brain imbalance can't acknowledge that, you know? So to a left brain imbalanced person, there's no such thing as spiritual or natural law. It doesn't exist.
Karma could exist without God through social dynamics, interpersonal social dynamics. It wouldn't be an objective thing, like it wouldn't necessarily always be in effect, but
as a matter of fact, all of existence has no purpose other than to continue its existence. See, survival is the highest aspiration to a left-brain imbalanced individual. Right and wrong have no bearing. There's no point in even discussing it, okay? Because right's what's right for me if I'm super left-brain imbalanced. Wrong is whatever affects me negatively. Okay? It doesn't matter what's actually moral. Okay? It's all subjective to a left brain imbalanced individual. And to them, nothing has any purpose. Since it's all a grand cosmic accident, how could there be a purpose for existence? Without a creator, who's going to create the purpose for it? You know? So it has no purpose other than to continue surviving. And again, that's right there is proof they're in the R complex, they're in the base brain. Survival is the highest goal. Survival is the only aspiration. Now, in Satanism, it's about as left brain imbalanced as it gets, folks. Yeah. You know what their number one law is? Survival. Survival is the highest law. Okay, and we hear about this in Darwinism too. The ultimate purpose of the being is to continue to survive. I would highly debate that. I would highly disagree with that. There are laws higher than survival. Okay? But in Satanism, they simply refer to it as self-preservation. And that means preservation of systems of belief as well. Systems that are serving the self, the egoic self. They must continue to survive. Self-preservation as the highest law. That's the number one tenet of Satanism. And it doesn't matter who you need to step on to do it. Who you need to step on to get one up on somebody else. This is extreme left brain imbalance worldview. All of these characteristics in the randomness worldview are hallmarks of scientism, atheism, totalitarianism, and dark occultism. You could add to that list. You know, whether you refer to it as Satanism, dark Luciferianism, it doesn't make a difference. It's the hallmarks of the dark occult. On the other side, on the right brain imbalanced side of the worldview, there's another worldview called determinism. Okay, determinism is based in right brain imbalance and is defined by, in general, helplessness,
there you go,
–
religiosity, and the dismissal of free will.
Okay, so I'm right brain imbalance confirmed.
Yeah, what is? How does emotion and how does emotion and what? Sorry, I'm losing my notes. Where intuition lead to determinism? Like, I feel like that would be like an intellect, fact-based compartmentalization of the universe that would drive you to that determination. I'm sorry. Maybe this is like a really small quibble, but this whole section is just like weird. It's just weird.
I don't know. I don't think there's any utility to an argument coming soon to be bifurcating these concepts into left and right brain. Again, I'm not being charitable. Fine. But like the only reason you'd want to do this dissertation on left right brain is to discount people's opinions that disagree with you because they fall into one of these categories. By saying, "Oh, you're imbalanced, so your opinion is invalid." So